Hello everyone, welcome to the Racist War, coming to you in this last gasp of summer here in Perth. I know it is technically autumn, but as far as I'm concerned, we have 4 months of summer and only 2 months of autumn here in Perth, and I'm glad to see the end of it. And we're also coming to you a little late. Knowlesy and I could not do it on Monday, and then it's just been a bit of a pain to kind of get our schedules to align. So instead, we're happy to have Fluoride on. How are you, sir? How hot is it over in Sydney?
Oh, it's only getting slightly sweaty at the moment, but it really doesn't feel like it's getting cooler. At least it's not getting hotter.
Yeah, true. I've only been to Sydney once, but it surprised me that like no one describes Sydney as humid. Uh, I guess people say that about Brisbane, but I found Sydney actually really humid, or at least compared to Perth. And I just always felt like incredibly sticky and wet whenever I walked outside. um, anyway, so guys, as a little different, we're going to start off talking about the economy. The reason being is that the budget was just handed down by Jim Chalmers, and this was actually unusually his fourth budget. Of course, they've almost done their full term in power now, and that would mean 3 years, which would mean three budgets. However, they seem to have wanted to just get a last one in at the last minute, right before the election, because we know that we're due to go to the polls the beginning or the middle of May. Now, it's questionable as to whether or not this was a good tactic or not. Some have suggested that simply with Hurricane Alfred, that they had no choice but to do a May election. And so, given that, it seems that they want to do a little bit of traditional vote bribery. So there's little sweeteners in the budget for you, such as $150 credit for your power bills. No surprise on that one, of course. Not to say that your power bills are naturally moving down; they're moving quite in the opposite direction. But the government is, as the Liberals pointed out, willing to just give a little bit of your own money back to solve the issue or to help the issue. Uh, Band-aid on a bullet wound, I've heard it described as. So I'm just going to jump over to as I do each year, the winners and losers page on ABC. I won't go through everything here because there is quite a lot, but we'll go through a few. So um, we'll start off with the winners. So, taxpayers. These are actually tax cuts that the Liberal Party has opposed, although I believe they've still already passed through the House, so it's kind of irrelevant. But this is because the Liberals say they don't go far enough. You know, it's a bit hard to believe them when they do things like vote against the cuts to student visas because the cuts aren't far enough. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, I would agree with that, but why does that mean you have to vote against the bill? Surely we should do something now to cut the amount of students here. But anyway, I diverge. Okay, so from next year, July 1st, the tax rate on income earned between $18,201 and $45,000 will be cut from from 16 to 15%. Wow. And then go to 14% in 2027.
Lower and lower.
So that was really it in terms of like dealing with tax brackets. That was all it is. So as they put it, the ABC calculated, well, that's $268, which you won't be able to start like actually, earning that saving until next year, nearly a year and a half away. And then it would save you $536 a year from then. Uh, that's bugger all. It's very, very small. And like I said, you're not going to get it until mid 2026. So I don't know if that is their election bribery. It's not a great one. Electricity bills already mentioned. You'll get, I think it's two separate rebates of $75 each, meaning you get $150 off power bills. The next winner
How
is,
generous.
yeah, job switches. So this is where the government will ban non-complete clauses for workers earning less than $175,000 a year, meaning
Mm.
they will be free to move to a competing business or start their own. Um, so they point out that long non-complete clauses can suppress wages, and they've been used across a number of industries such as construction and hairdressing. So, okay, they basically say this is a bit of a loophole left over in industrial relations law, and they want to close that. Oh, a winner, great pandas, giant pandas. Um,
What? Oh, this
uh,
the gamblers who are coming in.
Actually, not. They're literally talking about pandas.
For fuck's sake.
So
Well,
this is $3.8 million over 5 years to support uh, two pandas at Adelaide Zoo. My God.
those
Yeah,
things are bloody priceless. They're a national treasure of China.
they seem to
And
be, but the issue with pandas all the time is they don't want to root each other for
no,
whatever reason,
need a bloody turkey baster.
and we try to get them to do it in enclosures, and they just don't seem to want to. Um,
These fucking
so yeah,
things.
I mean, I guess the idea is they want this panda couple, to start breeding because pandas are endangered and everyone loves them for some reason. Okay.
They're kind of a non-meat eating bear, so goes with the teddy bear kind of environment. These things.
Yeah, I remember actually. I know he's a bit of a degenerate, but Jim Jeffries did like a bit on pandas and talking about how they're a dead weight and we need to cut them off, make them go extinct. I'm like, well, yeah, all right. If they cost us $3.8 million, two pandas over
Yeah.
5 years, like, yeah, that sounds like dead weight to me.
Well, as an ecologist enjoyer, I can enjoy them. Kind of, they're not an important part of it. It's not like some rare bug that needs to maintain the environment. They
No,
just sit around the bamboo field and frolic.
yeah, they just chew
Yeah,
bamboo all day. That's all they do.
yeah. Very
Uh,
unnutritious bamboo.
all right, so women's health. Oh, gee. So the contraceptive pill Slinder and also endometriosis treatment
Hmm.
medication will be put on the PBS. So yeah, Albo uh, did a press conference on this a few days ago. There's also a lot of concern that the US is going to place tariffs on some of the pharmaceuticals that we sell the United States that could, turn into a bit of a price spiral over here.
Well, that
Uh,
would fuck our manufacturing of pharmaceuticals.
oh, it would. Um, and it would cause some short term pain as well. But I'm just like, well, look, let's just do the tariffs ourselves. Like even though, like, I will acknowledge that Trump's tariffs on Australia will hurt Australia to an extent. But that's not really his concern. He's the president of America, the United States, and that's called economic nationalism. I think it's fair enough, but we should do it too. Support our own manufacturing, and then you can bring prices down that way because you've got locally produced goods that produce locally produced jobs. Um, so in the long term, I think it works out better for us.
Oh.
Um, so student debt holders. Um, so this is a move to cut student debts by 20%, which is going to cost $738 million over 4 years. So we know there's a lot of
Ooh.
there's a lot of chatter about like loan forgiveness. In other
Yep.
words, if you've got a debt, you just literally would pay nothing on it. I believe that's actually one of the policies of the Greens, or at least something pretty close to it. They're not being that nice about it. I think previously they tried to make the indexation, meaning when it moves with the inflation rate, they tried to make that a little bit less. And now, yeah, we've got this 20% cut. Now that only applies if you've got an existing student debt. That doesn't mean a 20% cut in the future.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
if you've already paid your student debt, well, nothing is retrospective. Unfortunately, you missed out. So yeah, it's only if
Well,
you've got a
well,
current.
kind of, your student debt should pay for itself, technically. If I can get into a skill, earns you money, what do you know? Your debt's already paid off. But yeah, with
It
bringing
used,
people from all over the world who can compete with that, ah, yeah, the ebb and flow of the market will fuck you.
yeah, well, it's that, but it's also people like doing useless degrees or going to uni and bombing out stuff like that. Universities need to be a lot stricter in terms of who they take on and who they keep as well. You hear stories about students like failing unit after unit, and the uni won't kick them out, and they just keep racking up a debt
Debt
that
upon
gets
debt
bigger and
and
bigger.
living the lifestyle of being a uni student. I think in America, quote me if I'm wrong, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but in America, I think it's the only thing you can't bankrupt yourself over. As in, you go bankrupt, you're still maintaining that net debt, and
Yeah.
bloody, that's a pretty powerful lobby over in America. I imagine it's pretty bloody big here.
Well, I know that what they've been pushing for here is for when you apply for a home loan and you've got a student debt,
Mm,
they want to make it so that it would be illegal for the bank to take your student debt into account when approving you for a bank loan. Um,
mm,
I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that because that's obviously a factor in the equation that the bank
yeah,
needs to take into consideration because it determines how much of a risk uh, that person is taking on the loan. So, I mean, I
mm.
get the principle behind it. I get the motivation. I think it's well intended, but I don't know if that would work out long term.
Well,
We don't need
probably
a
gonna
repeat of the GFC and all that shit that happened.
it's probably going to cause a knock-on effect that, all right, we're going to have to find another. Well, the bank isn't just sitting on its haunches; it's looking for all sorts of ways to fiddle around the edges. Just like with work, kind of, if they won't fire you for a thing that you didn't do wrong, they'll find another reason. They won't kind of do that, and it's probably going to whack a whole bunch of other people. The way the bank basically adjusts and schemes around looking at those people who have debts and that legally can't, knock on the head
Yeah.
for having a bad one.
Right, and I mean they already do that. I mean, like for example, uh, you'll actually hear a lot. Like the Aboriginal lobby will say that they're discriminated against when it comes to applying for a home loan, and they'll compare it to someone else who maybe not only got approved but got approved for a bigger loan and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
actually don't doubt that. I think that's true, but again, I would say just like the student debt, that is a factor to be taken into consideration when determining how much of a risk that person is at defaulting. And for very good reason, Aborigines are more likely to default on their debt. Now, of course, the bank is not going to make that the reason. They're not going to tell you, yeah, we knocked you back because you're Aboriginal. Of course not. They will find something else to say. But that doesn't mean they didn't consider it, you know. Same with insurance companies. Same with landlords. They'll come up with another reason, but yeah, they may well have not given you that rental because you're Aboriginal, and who can blame them for doing that?
Yep.
All right. Oh God, a winner is social cohesion. So, $178 million 5-year package that will support several social cohesion measures, including money for multicultural media and capacity building for African Australian community groups. Um, Okay, let's just comment on that first. That is obviously to do with the huge increase in African crime that we have in Australia,
Bloody
particularly
Melbourne.
in Melbourne. Yes, to an increasing extent in Adelaide as well. I've read several stories about African crime coming from there. There was a fucking based video that got out from Melbourne of two Aussies like fighting off two African home invaders. Um, one of the guys is wearing high vis, and the other guy is in his undies, and they just force um, these guys the fuck out, which was great to see. Oh, I just let Nolsey in. Hey, Nolsey, you've
Hello, my
decided to
microphone is
join
gonna be
us.
shit because I'm on scene. I'm by the
Oh,
beach.
okay. Are you on your phone?
Yes,
Okay.
I think I can hear the
Sorry,
waves in the background.
likely.
it's not the best quality, but we can understand you. Um, so anyway, I was talking about the Social Cohesion Fund, $178 million over 5 years. So yeah, part of that is going to the African Australian community, um, because they think that if they just create cultural and diversionary programs, that will persuade them not to commit crimes. Yeah, right.
I'd like to
Uh,
quote from America: "Money for them programs and shit."
yes.
No, I was gonna say I'll go
We
to America. Like, how many fucking millions of U.S. dollars, billions, possibly even trillions of U.S. dollars has been put in the black community to stop randomly raping people?
Not enough. Fuck.
It's money down the pisser. That's all it is. It's, you know, nationalists would be great at doing a Doge, doing a Department of Government Efficiency. I mean that sincerely because we would slash so much out of the fucking budget, like stuff like that. That both sides of politics support. People call us socialists or whatever because we might support universal health care or even university study. But think of all the other stuff that we would just get rid of, like social cohesion funds. We would cut
And
so much.
there wouldn't be a kind of routine of trying to pretend the emperor has clothes. You're just gonna say it outright, do it, and it'd be effective.
Right. We don't have to dance around the bloody issue, whatever.
Yeah, it'd spend
Okay,
a fucking decade trying to get around it.
so here's perhaps the money shot, though. $31 million of that 178 is going to go to the restoration of the Adass Israel synagogue. Now, that, of course, was the Melbourne
Oh,
synagogue that was supposedly firebombed. And the reason why,
Supposedly.
supposedly, and they're saying the reason why they need all that money is to protect the Torah scrolls that they have there. I assume they mean like those are original scrolls. And also security upgrades. God, they love that, don't they? Spending money on security. And I got to also point out, I believe they've already raised funds over $1 million from, just like, what do you call it, crowdfunding, just online donations,
Mm,
plus an insurance payout for it.
yes.
It's like they've basically already committed to
triple
doing
dipping.
a
Wait
yeah,
for the fourth tip. They're gonna find a fourth way to do this.
Oive, like if we don't get 5 times the amount of reassurance that our building, our synagogue, our temple should be constructed, that's anti-Semitism. Also, by the way, like we say supposedly, I'm gonna raise you a question. Have you found a victim of arson who was not burnt in his face, chest, or like feet, or the rest of his clothing, but only burnt on his hands?
yeah, yeah.
Literally,
Um,
the firefighters were just like, okay, we're not gonna touch this with a fucking 10-foot pole because we know where this is gonna get us.
Yeah. And like people calling us conspiracy theorists over positing that claim, well, we were right about the fucking caravan, weren't we? You know, we said from the bloody beginning that was a setup, and then New South Wales police admitted it was. So, no, that is not
Except it
some way
changed
out
nothing.
here.
They still got their bloody their preschoolers kind of escorted by police. They still got everything they wanted. and it's not going away. You can't unshow these signs of force and
Right.
and help towards their community. Not that they would.
Okay, now there's also a further $60.4 million, again for security improvements, but these go to both the Jewish and the Muslim community. Now, can I just point out that there was a social cohesion fund that was set aside for the Jewish and Muslim communities in 2023, because that was just after October 7
October
had
9th.
happened. That was when, the surge in anti-Semitism, as we're told, started to rise. And we actually covered at the time that the Muslim groups had got roughly $1.1 million. And, that's already too much money, don't get me wrong. But the ECAJ, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, got $25 million.
Fuck me
So
dead.
it is not evenly balanced,
What population amount do the Muslims make up of Australia? What's their
more than
percentage?
Jews.
It's like it's
More
point
than
four
Jews.
point. Yeah, it's like 0.4 for Muslims, and for Jews it's literally like 0.2, 0.5, depending.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I don't want to give them money either. But, what do we really, when we talk about social cohesion, we're talking about basically bribing communities in the hopes that they'll not commit crimes and not engage in insightful rhetoric against other groups.
But
How's that
we're
working?
doing. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're doing on the fucking micro level what is being done on the macro level on the geopolitical scale. Like it's like, oh, like what is what is US aid paying for? Like what is US foreign aid paying for? It's mostly paying for countries to not fucking start fucking with each other. Like Israel says like, oh God, Egypt is paid more than Israel. It's like, yeah, they pay you more so that they don't fucking attack you.
Yes.
Until
What
Egypt
was the
goes down the
what
shitter.
was the word that Chris Minns used to describe Australian multiculturalism? Do we remember the word?
Fragile.
Fragile. I completely agree, Premier Minns. Completely agree. And if it was so
George.
natural, if it was all just spontaneous harmony like we're told it is, you wouldn't need to dedicate $178 million to social cohesion programs. Fuck. Okay. Moving on with winners. Oh, Australian products. So $20 million investment into initiatives to encourage consumers to buy Australian-made products. So this is somewhat of a reaction to the tariffs, but it's not a tariff, though. We're not responding with tariffs or other forms of protectionism. We're just responding with subsidies, which is still, I guess, sort of a form of protectionism. Because I know that they were doing this when it came to green energy products, which we covered a couple of episodes ago. Albo's like, oh yeah, one way we can respond to the trade war is just pump more money into the green energy products that we're manufacturing in the Future Made in Australia program.
But also like the United States is not one of our big partners when it comes to actual like material trade and da 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 da. So I mean, this could be equivalent to their tariffs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want us to respond in kind and, start getting some real manufacturing back on shore. And I don't mean fucking solar panels. I mean like cars and air conditioners, like real things that are
I mean,
useful.
in all fairness, we'll have to nuke China at that point.
Maybe. But I mean, look, we still managed to hold on to Holden for a long time, like while we had manufacturing. Like
Mm.
we could at least maybe get something like that back. I know we can't return to the glory days. That's obvious. But
Well, imagine the
some
people who held a grudge against them for leaving. Basically, you're either gonna pass away or forget about it with the price of cars and all that. So, brand loyalty is a hell
Branch
of a
opening,
thing to be
branch
chasing.
closing.
All right. So aged care, $88.3 million on wage increases, $292 million spent over 5 years to continue the implementation of recommendations of the recent Royal Commission. Yeah, aged care workers tend to actually get pretty significant jumps in their wages ever since COVID because a shitload of them quit during COVID, understandably, and the government freaked the fuck out. And I remember, like, at one stage, they got a 15% pay rise, just straight out. Meanwhile, the nurses get like a 3.5% pay rise. But
Well, there's the thing. They
And then with inflation over X many fucking years.
oh yeah, it doesn't catch up to it. But there's the thing is they got all the fame. They got the kind of TikTok. You had motivational posters showing these nurses things, and they were a high class at one point. The only thing they didn't get was fucking paid.
Right. Yeah, they're heroes, but we don't want to give them any money. All right, another winner is childcare. So, 3 days of subsidised care will be made available to all families earning less than $500,000, and replacing the existing activity test for those days of care. Look, basically they're subsidising them more, but childcare costs always end up going up anyway. So,
A fucking coupon for 3 days? That's nothing.
yeah, I mean, it's not much, but like, I would just like to see childcare basically abolished because that means we would be encouraging mothers to actually look after their own children, not strangers.
Whammon to whammon. God, that's a
Yes.
novel concept.
It's not an extreme idea that mothers should raise their own children. So
God, that's... Why are you such a radical and extremist? Like, you're going to upset the entire economic world order at this point, Finian.
Well, I mean, this is also the reason why both sides are quite generous when it comes to childcare funding, because they want mum and dad to be out working full-time jobs.
Yep.
That's why
The economic boost from having two full-time people not even looking at their kids, but falling asleep in bed as soon as they get home after getting dinner on the way home. It's very efficient.
Yeah, it's like you don't have any quality time left. Okay. Disaster recovery. So $1.2 billion extra towards Cyclone Alfred relief.
Good.
Also, there is $11.6 billion provisioned for the next 4 years, and that's just for, whatever disasters are to come. And yes, we do have a lot of natural disasters in Australia, but we always have. They're not increasing because of climate change.
Just the natural state of the bush burning down from time to time as it floods and burning debris go sailing into the sea.
That's right, yeah. And no, like a return to so-called controlled burning is not going to help with any of that.
Patchwork burning.
I control burning by turning.
All right, so another winner is major roads. So $17.1 billion into construction of roads over the next 10 years. Part of that is going towards upgrade of the Bruce Highway in Queensland, and then there's just a variety of other projects scattered throughout the country. Conservation, $250 million over 5 years towards Labor's target of ensuring 30% of Australia's land mass is protected conservation by 2030. Yeah, I mean, no, look, even though, I hate fucking the politics of green energy, it doesn't mean I'm not a conservationist. Certainly, I would like to maintain natural environment in this country. And I don't think that that's put at major risk by burning fossil fuels, and certainly not by nuclear. But yeah, I mean, I like how in Australia
nuclear is the best.
Hey,
nuclear would be the best for that in terms of land usage yes.
Yeah.
Solar. If you're gonna do solar, solar really hard, but also we've spoken hard on like the infrastructure and requirements of solar, and then wind. Well, go blow it up your ass.
All right. So yeah, I mean, so this is striving towards the goal of having 30% of our landmass be protected as a conservation area by 2030. And
Well, there's plenty of
yeah,
open area in the middle of the fucking that nobody bloody lives in. So fuck.
yeah, that's true. And like when people will deride the slogan "fuck off, we're full," because they're like, oh, like Australia has all this empty space. It's like, yeah, but all that empty space you're talking about is completely uninhabitable. People, when they come here, go to our major cities and basically nowhere else. And those major cities are full. Okay.
Yep. And squeezed.
But
Kind of 20 years of takes 20 years to open a land of property here in Sydney. And
I think
that's the only intention.
That is a classic big brain, grug brain alliance. The fuck off, we're full thing. The people in the middle are the ones who just go, oh, well, look how big geographically Australia is. And then they don't have any consideration for the population concentrations. Okay, so
Oh my god!
The entire country is like 89%.
don't know what Nolsey is doing back there.
He's breaking out real hard. If you're moving around your mic, it's going terribly, Nolsey.
Oh yeah, so I think we covered a bit of this. So there's a freeze on the tax on tap beer for 2 years. It doesn't say it here, but I remember when we covered this, that worked out to be approximately a cent of savings for a mid-strength pint. So, like, okay,
Completely
that's
unnoticeable.
but that's basically like no. And fuck, like, alcohol that you buy at the bar is like one of those items in the cost of living increase that has just ballooned. It's massive. Like if you get a nice beer, you can pay almost $20 a pint now for a good beer.
A lovely ginger beer. Brookvale Union. Highly recommended. Except for the cost. Fuck me dead.
Yeah. No, I was actually thinking of that one because that's like $17.50 a pint. Like usually, if you want, it's like, yeah, because I got one a couple of weeks ago and I was like, really? Am I paying that much for bloody ginger beer?
Tasty.
All right, so first home buyers. So this is the help to buy scheme. So this is where the government owns part of the house, or at least that's how they say it. So the government would say cover up to 40% of the cost, and then later on, supposedly, you could then purchase the government's share in your house if you ever get there, if you ever get that money. So yeah, that's been open to couples earning up to $100,000. And yeah, I don't know. Nolsey, what? I remember you had some critique of this help to buy scheme. I can't quite remember what it was. Oh, he's dropped off. Okay. Nolsey comes back, I'll ask him about that one. All right. Another winner is health. No surprise there. Look, we've really gone through all the health stuff, so I won't comment on that. Indigenous communities, no surprise. $55.2 million over 4 years to extend lease arrangements with traditional owners. That means public housing for Aborigines. Kind of public housing that you don't get. Kind of public housing where if you destroy the public housing, the government will just rebuild it for you.
Smash in the wall, shit in the wall, put garbage in the wall.
There was actually a court decision saying that you have a right to affordable housing, and that includes if you wreck that housing yourself. Which is...
yeah, I'm pretty sure if I were to do something horrible to my fucking apartment, I don't have a right to do that. And
no,
the right is to pay for the fucking repairs and get the fuck out.
Yes, that's exactly what would happen. Unless you could somehow convince them that you're of Aboriginal extraction.
Oh, a good
Another
slab
one
of beer and maybe.
Yeah. Okay, another winner is the PBS. Again, we've sort of gone through that, discussing health.
Mhm.
So steel and aluminium workers is another one we've talked about. Like, so there's a $219 million package set aside for Whyalla and the steel workers there to keep them in employment. That's also why they have dropped the hydrogen power plant that they had planned in South Australia, because now with this bailout money they need for Whyalla, they basically don't have the funds for that anymore. And also the fact that I think Labor is just beginning to realise that that hydrogen is just another bullshit green energy scheme that is just as unreliable as wind turbines and solar panels. Justice support. So $21.4 million over 3 years to improve access to legal advice, legal services. So this, think of things like legal aid. The places you go to, say, talk to a lawyer when you can't afford a private one yourself.
Basically, Centrelink, but for law.
Yeah, kind of. This is surprising. They classed the NDIS, the disability scheme, as a winner, even though it's now a lot harder to get on it. You also can't get the bullshit schemes like crystal therapy and going to a prostitute, which
Oh, I
were
bet
actually
that spread like wildfire. Word on that.
it did. But yeah, one of Bill Shorten's last acts of Parliament was to remove that service from the NDIS. But yeah, they're still declaring it a winner because they're still pumping support packages through. And there's an extra $175.4 million spent on enhancing fraud detection. So that's basically they're using money to detect fraud and therefore actually spend less money in the future.
Yeah, that's some of your Bureau of fucking efficiency thing.
Right.
Using AI to detect fraud, bloody finding ways to detect ways of savings.
And by the way, that is yet another reason as to why you don't need a separate government department to do that. I mean, like doing basic audits of spending is something that government bodies already do. They don't need a separate department to do that.
Hopefully, they
Okay.
outcompete the public efficiency department, and it becomes defunct.
Yes. No, I think it's a joke. And by the way, like Dutton basically wants to set up one of them and put Jacinta Price in charge of it. And that's right.
Yep.
Putting an Aboriginal in charge of cutting government spending. Okay, and the last winner we have is Ukraine. So we're giving them $17 million over the 2 years. And as we've talked about before, Albo's even willing to commit to a coalition of the willing, meaning the possibility of Australian ground troops actually sent to
Can he
Ukraine.
fucking not? Ugh.
Yeah, well, look, I personally don't think that is going to happen. There's just not the political will, but also, Trump is really winding that war down anyway. And Ukraine are probably going to go to the negotiating table pretty soon and basically agree to cede territory to Russia, which is basically how we all knew this war was going to end in the first place. We've just delayed it unnecessarily. Anyway, well, let's talk about the losers, and I'll also go through neutral parties as well, where there's just been basically no change. Okay, so a loser is foreign home buyers. Now, okay, so foreign persons, temporary residents, will be banned from buying existing houses in Australia for 2 years from next month. All right. Like, there's little things here they're doing to encourage local investment and locals buying their own homes, rather than foreigners buying up property and then just renting them out. But it's not enough. How about we just ban them completely forever? That would
Well,
be.
there's the thing is, I think they're just kind of peppering it, spicing it up, saying, "Ooh, look, we're banning it." Doesn't that make you really interested in getting it in a couple of years' time? Doesn't it?
Yeah, it's window dressing to make it look like they're doing something about surging housing prices.
Performative kind of nationalism routine. Ugh. Probably work
I
though.
thought,
You'd probably say, "Oh yeah, look at this, fucking yeah, get him, Gub." Fucking
also,
it's gonna be
like,
effective.
if you are a foreign entity, I bet there's ways you can get around it. I bet there's a loophole.
Yeah, move
That,
to Australia, have a student visa, and buy a property. Ta-da!
yeah, well, it's easy enough to get a visa, so yeah, that's one way you could do it. So yeah, even though they've counted them here as a loser, it's like no, this is like very superficial what they're doing here. Um, okay, so the budget balance, they said that's no change. All right, but this was a deficit. I'm sorry, I don't know what the actual deficit was.
Mhm.
But it says the budget took an unexpected $36 billion over the 4-year forecast. And that's mainly due to higher company tax and lower level of spending on regular payments. But they almost completely spent all of that. A lot of it going to Medicare, other to infrastructure. So yeah, I think it was a pretty small deficit. But keep in mind, Jim Chalmers said that we're probably in for deficits for the next 10 years. So yeah, um, not that that matters a hell of a lot. I'm not going to make a big deal of that like they are at Sky News. But yeah, the idea that this is balancing the books basically is not true. Okay, so economic outlook they've also got as neutral. Um, so here they're just talking about GDP, really. Yeah, the GDP growth is sluggish, as they put it. And they reckon that that is going to make, now with the imposition of US tariffs, that could hurt Australia's growth by about 0.1%. Now, remember, our current GDP growth is about 0.1%. So,
Wham! The slightest
and,
waves coming out of America has washed us away.
but also, remember, we need to be talking about per capita GDP. In other words, is the average person, is their standard of living increasing or decreasing? And it's quite obvious it's decreasing. So we're not technically in a recession, but for all intents and purposes, we are, because our money is not going as far as it used to. Okay, another loser is tax revenue. Yeah, so this is a lot to do with a decrease in buying Australian resources. We're definitely a resources-based economy. And when considering the taxes that we have on that and the royalties, well, the government coffers lose as well if there are less people buying those. Now, here's an interesting one. Tobacco revenue is a loser. Again, something we've talked about before, and it's basically because of the growth of the black market. And the growth of the
Chop,
black
chop.
market is directly linked to the ever increasing excise tax that they have on cigarettes. And it's like well over 50%, well over 50% of the price of a pack of cigarettes is tax. You pay more in tax than you do for the actual product itself. Um, and I mean, I'm not a smoker, but I have seen how ridiculous some of the prices have gotten. So yeah, not a surprise. We've now got a massive black market in Australia, and if you buy on the black market, obviously you're not giving any tax money to the government. So
Yep.
yeah,
And you don't know where that money goes. Yep.
Yeah, but this was a problem of the government's own making. The massive increases to excise have just backfired on them.
What is the rate of
Huh?
smoking nowadays? I imagine it's probably a little dropped because of the cost. If it was cheap as chips, yeah,
I
people it
think
would
it's still
slowly,
like less
steadily
than
grow in the
10%.
population.
Like, I think it's like just under 10% of adults either smoke or vape, something like that.
Hmm.
It might be a bit more if you take vaping into consideration, because I seem to see that more than smoking nowadays.
But here's the thing: is people coming from overseas with cultures of cheap tobacco, they're gonna want to smoke. They're gonna look at the price, and they're gonna want to find a black market dealer for that smoke.
Yeah, that's true too. Okay, so they've got a loser down as temporary migrants. Oh my God. Okay, let me read out what the ABC says here.
Ooh,
Treasury is forecasting overseas migration will drop by 75,000 in the next financial year. No, it won't.
woo!
It we've covered several of these projections before, put out by Labor. They never meet them. For example, I think later we've got a story on foreign students. The amount of student visas that are being approved in Australia have actually again gone up, even though,
Imagine my shock.
well, the government said that they were being cut by 24%. Yet, apparently, we still have a record amount of uh, student migrants coming here. So I'm sorry, if Treasury have forecast this 75,000 person uh, reduction, it's just not true because they never make these projections. Okay, so net overseas migration is forecast to drop from 335,000 this year to 260, and then to 225,000 the year after. No, again, not true. These are the fake projections that they're putting out uh, based on statistics they've pulled out of their assholes, and they're never going to meet them because they never do. Okay,
Kind
tradies.
of.
So the boosted instant asset write-off tax benefit will end in July. Apparently, a lot of tradies use that. So it allows businesses to claim an immediate $20,000 deduction from their tax, and that will fall back from 20,000 to only $1,000 in the next financial
Ah,
year. Yeah,
that's a big hit.
that is a big hit. Yeah, I got to say, I don't agree with that. I mean, it would be great if we didn't need those kind of schemes in the first place. And, if we did have a protected economy, that would be the case. And we wouldn't need to subsidize trading in that way. But because we're a global player and we cut our tariffs all the way back in the 80s and decimated our manufacturing, this is kind of really the only way you can keep those people afloat. So,
Well, hopefully, the reason they're not just cutting it entirely to nothing is because I'm going to cut it, see how it goes, say, oh, these poor fucking bastards, and then whack it back up again. But it's
yeah,
going to cost
yeah.
in the meantime.
Okay, so defense, no change. That's arguable again. But $1 billion in defense spending is brought forward for the manufacture of guided rockets. All right. I hope they're more impressive than our drones.
Guided
Um,
rockets. What is that, like a javelins?
I don't know.
Okay. Guided rockets could mean anything.
Loser is welfare recipients. So, yeah, a lot of people basically say that, welfare payments don't move in line with inflation or just general cost of living increases. Yeah, kind of true, I guess. I guess if you're a genuine job seeker, then, I feel sorry for you. You should get something good enough. But yeah, I mean, you're also competing with a massive foreign labor force that plays a big role as well. Okay, and our last loser is consultants. Right, so Labor is claiming that they have saved $720 million from cutting spending on specialist consultants. So this is again, like their own form of Doge. And yeah, I saw Jim Chalmers spruiking this before the budget was handed down. Yeah, they're just trying to convince you that Labor are good economic managers and don't spend money that they don't have. But they do. Okay.
Well, they're making
So-
a bit of a song and dance out of it, so so
Yeah.
I guess that department's earning its way. Fuck.
So look, if I go to the other prep that I put in here, I wrote pretty much all of this. Well, copied and pasted it on Monday, and then we couldn't do the show. So some of this might be a bit out of date. For example, my first bit of prep was actually on precisely what I just covered. The $722 million slashed, apparently, from hiring consultants. But let me go through, have a look at the rest of my prep to see if any of this is relevant. Not really. Decade of budget deficits has been forecast. Australia has also recorded the sharpest increase in public debt in the developed world. So when you look at like other forms of debt that they measure, like what are they? Not like
Business debt?
the budget itself. What do they call it? Like the current account deficit. I remember Sky News saying that is up to almost $1 trillion at the moment. But remember, that is not government debt. That's just like the debt that Australia overall is in. If you want to look at America's current account deficit, it's significantly bigger than ours. So that's not a huge thing.
Bigger population, bigger land, bigger economy, and kind of hegemon of the world. Going to have the biggest debt naturally.
Oh, definitely. It costs a lot of money to maintain a global empire.
$13 billion for an aircraft carrier.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the other stuff I had here was just about bad forecasting. The Treasurer has admitted that there are hard economic times, and a lot of economists have said, yeah, like the worst is yet to come. So strap in for that. Hospitality businesses have apparently closed in record numbers over the last month because customers are dwindling down all the time. Yeah, easy explanation for that. People have less disposable income, and when you're cutting your own personal budget, well, first of all, you just stop buying non-essential items. So that bit of extra money that you spend on yourself at the cafe or whatever, you just won't spend it. You'll save that for the necessities.
Instant coffee at home and bring a thermos with you. And there goes a bunch of people's jobs.
Yeah, or sneak a hit flask in to the bar and just buy a Coke and fill it up in the toilet. No, not really. That's technically a Fed post, isn't it, me saying that? So,
Them fighting words.
Yeah, so 5 million people getting welfare will basically be worse off in the next financial year.
All right.
Middle
My
to
condolences to the bludgers out there.
Oh, yeah. Here's an interesting one. There was a study that came out that found that if you want to live comfortably in a typical rental in Australia, you would need to earn an income of $130,000 a year. Wow. And
Well, that's why you half it by living with somebody.
Right. But still, I mean, that's big. And if you and your partner are earning 65 grand a year, which is pretty common wage to be earning, yeah, it's like you're only just making it. And that's not even talking about saving money for a mortgage. It's just
Or affording a bloody house sometime into the future.
Yeah. Okay, and just finally on the economy, Woolworths and Coles will avoid forced breakups or financial penalties as a result
Hmm.
of the Consumer Watchdog's investigation into what we often call the duopoly in groceries. Now, the Libs have vowed to actually do something about that if they're elected. They want to use divestiture powers to stop anti competitive practices of Coles and Woolworths. That was really at the behest of the National Party. I don't think that really fits with the Liberal Party ethos.
No, it doesn't.
And you know what? It doesn't really fit with Labor's either, because commenting on that, Albanese said he considers that to be running a command economy. And he's like, what? You think the Labor Party are a bunch of socialists or something? Um, well, your party constitution, Albo, if you're familiar with it, does actually refer to the Labor Party as a democratic socialist party. So, yeah, it's kind of there in writing. All right. So let's now move on to immigration. Um, Now, what was referred to as a thought bubble by Albanese is the idea of holding a referendum to deport criminal dual citizens. Um, now,
I can see why they put the kibosh on that.
right. But I mean, also, why did Dutton say this? He said this at the same time he was talking about adding questions to the citizenship test about anti Semitism. So he's talking about keeping out people who don't like Jews. That's what he's talking about.
Hmm. So you can't
All
just
right.
blanket call this one. You're going to have to label them as terrorists or something before you do
Yeah.
that.
Now, look, if you don't know, if you're a dual citizen, the only way you can have your Australian citizenship torn up is if you're found guilty of terrorism. When you hear about other people being deported because of their criminal record, they're permanent residents. They're not citizens. Usually, they're people who were eligible for citizenship, but they just never bothered to take it out. Um, and there's been quite a few stories about like New Zealanders and New Zealand's never happy about that we dump like these Maori gang members back where they came from.
Beats
I'm
having them in
sorry.
our prisons.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's your problem to deal with. You need to crack down on Maori crime in New Zealand, just
Best
like
of
we need to
luck.
crack down on Aboriginal crime. But yeah, our natives don't move to your country, okay? So why should they come to
They'll
ours?
get eaten if they did.
Yeah, they probably would. Anyway, look, in principle, though, I would support it. I mean, sure, if it's a way of getting rid of criminals in the country, great. I'm not sure if you would need a constitutional amendment on that. I'm not really sure. But look, we just had a referendum that cost almost $500 million, and it was pointless. It was absolutely blown out of the water. Uh, and Dutton said at the time that there was no appetite for another referendum, and he was right. So, you know, nothing much has changed since then, Peter. It wasn't all that long ago. So, while, yeah, I would agree with this in principle, I'd say you could probably simply do it through Act of Parliament. And there's obviously much better ways of cracking down on immigration anyway. Even if you were to implement a policy like that, it would just mean we get rid of a few of the scumbags, but it
They
doesn't
get
make much
caught,
of a
kind of
difference
like
to
in
the people.
America. Kind
Yeah,
of America, where they're just throwing out the worst of the worst. Oh, that's great. What about the fucking worst?
yeah, yeah. And the other thing, like I said, what I don't like about it, I don't like the motive behind it. Whenever he talks about, like, say, deporting student activists, it's always because they're like pro-Palestine activists or they're critical of Israel or something. It's just always to do with Jews. Remember,
The only reason in the media. Yeah.
remember the coalition voted against the cap on student visas, and he also said, Dutton said, that they have no plans to decrease net migration.
Yep.
Right? So the
So
only
if they
time,
can't get them by student visas, they'll hook them or by hook or by crook, they'll get them in another way.
oh yeah, of course. So yeah, it's hard for me to take statements like that seriously. Now, oh yeah, it's funny. Like the Australian had an article on the muddled message that Peter Dutton has put out there. Now, I just mentioned the fact that he said that there was no plan to cut net migration. So here's what he said about that. He said, I haven't walked that back at all. That was an ABC report or something. Side note, no, he said that on Sky News. He said it in a Sky News interview. So it wasn't some kind of spin that the ABC put on it. That's fucking bullshit. And I reckon he knows that. So he said that he hasn't flip-flopped on the issue. And he committed to a target for the coalition to reduce the number of permanent visas. So here's what he said. Our plan is to reduce the permanent migration program down from where it is at the moment to 140,000 in year 1 and 2, and then we bring it up in years 3 and 4. Okay, that is not the same as cutting net migration. As we've said many, many times before, if you cut permanent visas, all that happens is you get more temporary visas. That's it. That doesn't actually decrease the amount of migrants coming in. So again, even though he's there saying, "Oh no, I didn't walk that back. I never said I was going to I was not going to cut net migration because I have a plan to bring down permanent visas." That's not the same thing, and he knows that. This again is just fucking window dressing bullshit that he's putting out there.
Yeah, now the conversation's about that. About quibbling about permanent temporaries, not what the fuck is going on with immigration.
So here's actually the commentary, I guess you could put it, even though this wasn't an opinion piece in the Australian. It says approximately 60% of those awarded permanent visas are already in Australia, meaning the coalition's proposed cut to visa numbers will only have a limited impact on the overall net migration intake. Right. It would basically have no impact. And those people who are denied a permanent visa or are not eligible to apply for one will simply apply for a temporary visa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, now, hold on. Here's maybe the Liberal Party getting serious. So, a plan that they're just floating for the time being, this is to forcing universities to reduce the number of foreign students to a percentage of their total numbers or below overseas enrollment. So in other words, like, this class could just have 10% foreign students, something like that. So they're looking for actually a hard cap on enrollments. Yeah, again, that sounds good on the surface. But no, here's what they say here. That could mean, because remember they're only floating the idea, capping overseas enrollments to 30 to 35% of the university students. That's about what it already is. Okay.
Well, for fuck's sake. Without that bit of thing, so you fucking squeeze them in. Only the best to get. Oh, it's already that. Well, fuck me, dead.
Right. So that's basically nothing. And again, I have to repeat, the coalition voted against the Labor Party's capping of international students. So, why would I believe them now when they propose? Well, actually, maybe it's believable because it would make no bloody difference. Because they're talking about a cap of the existing percentage of foreign students anyway. So it'd make no bloody difference.
Effective in in getting people out to vote. As I say, without that tidbit of an idea, oh, this might make changes. Nope. You gave me the idea that it was the same number. So, yeah, very very good lawyering by the politicians on this one.
Yeah, and look, we very may well get a Dutton government. I've said I'm not surprised if Labor actually are kicked out after only one term. But yeah, if we do, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be right again. You're going to see net migration will increase because it does. Like ever since Whitlam, basically, net migration has simply increased year after year, completely notwithstanding which party is in power. It simply just grows at a linear progression every year. Okay. Oh God. So while all of this is going on, a coalition of refugee and human rights organizations have written an open letter to the major parties. It is signed by more than 30 groups, including, well, the usual suspects, Amnesty International, the Asylum Seekers Center. And it says that, I'll read a portion of it. Political debate, both during outside election campaigns, has often seen people seeking asylum become the target of unacceptable rhetoric, often describing refugees and people seeking asylum in a degrading and hostile manner. This is a poor reflection on how Australia is perceived internationally and undermines our proud record as a truly multicultural nation and as a leader in refugee resettlement and protection principles. If that is a poor reflection and somehow makes other people doubt our commitment to multiculturalism, that is a good thing. All right. The problem is what they're complaining about here isn't real. All right. They also had stuff in here about how migrants feel like they're being blamed for the cost of living crisis.
Probably by giving them a leading question.
I mean, look, I will admit, I blame the Canberra elite first and foremost for letting people in. I can't really knock an individual decision to seek a better quality of life in Australia. It's completely understandable why people make that decision. But we should be saying no to them. We're the ones ultimately who have the say, and we should just say no, sorry, not taking you in. And yes, if we take more of you in, that will increase housing prices and rent prices and prices across the board, basically.
And one day people will be fleeing Australia for the exact same reason they came here.
Yeah. And, if we do impose a policy like that, I don't give a shit if it hurts people's feelings. All right? Since when were people's feelings so important, especially of people who don't even live here yet? Oh, okay, and now finally on migration. I'm sorry I haven't looked into why this is bullshit, but it has to be. There was a study done at some Australian university. Where was it? Oh, University of South Australia. Now, it is said that there is absolutely no link between international student numbers and the cost of rent.
Population
Really?
does not increase the pressure of rental prices. That's news to me.
Now, I did see one explanation as to why that would be, and that's because students live in student accommodation.
Ah.
But the thing is, most of them don't. Most foreign students who come to this country find a place to stay in the private rental market. They don't just stay on the university campus. A lot of them do, but not all of them.
A hostel, a place closer to work so they can do the work while going through the motions of study. Yep.
Right. So for that reason, I just can't believe it. But also, this report was supported by the Property Council of Australia. All right. Not to mention all of the green left. This was really hot on Twitter. I saw people were posting this a lot, saying, "Ha ha, bigots, you're wrong. We've got a university study behind it." Well, when it's supported by the Property Council of Australia, I'm sorry if I'm a little skeptical. And considering how many bullshit reports universities put out there with flawed methodology all the time, for example, in social psychology, they have about a 20% replication rate. In other words, when they try to repeat a study, most of the time they do not end up with the same results, which obviously suggests that the researchers are manipulating the method to arrive at a predetermined result.
What was it called? A crisis of That's right, the replication crisis. Basically, science is going down the shit here. Shit's fucked.
Particularly, and the worst offender is psychology, when it's easy to tell why.
Bloody flooded market. That's the people going in to become students to become that. Yeah, fucking flooded as fuck market. I guess I can kind of emphasize with, all right, I'm getting this degree so I can understand people better. How's that going?
Well, I mean, the problem is, social psychology, if you do it properly, can really tell us some insightful things. If you just read, I know he's more of an evolutionary psychologist, but Edward Dutton, for example, if you read his work, when you do the method correctly, you'll find very interesting results, very interesting things about human nature, and differences between types of people as well. The problem is, psychology department is just as left leaning as the politics department in a university, unfortunately.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on to anti-Semitism, and this section is actually a bit smaller than it usually is on the racer. Look, just quickly, those two nurses in Bankstown have made their first appearance in court. You know what? I won't read their names because they're just getting saturation coverage as it is. It was just interesting to see the woman. She was like shielded by a whole bunch of men who were covering their own faces with hoodies on the way in. They were just trying to create like this human shield to protect her against the media.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, again, I'll just say too much is being made about this. Like, why is it that this made American news, for example? Was it really that bad? Because when I saw that video, I did not think they were serious at all. It was rhetorical bluster. That's all.
Yep, and it's an international crisis now.
Okay, so yeah, we've got a story here on the Prosh newspaper. Now, Fluoride, you would not have heard about this.
The end of times.
Yeah, no, it's funny. So, for those who don't know, if you're in WA, and definitely if you've been a WA student, you would know what the Prosh paper is. It's a satirical publication, actually printed just like a newspaper, that is produced by the Student Guild at UWA. And I haven't read a Prosh paper in a few years, I must admit, but they were fucking hilarious. They really were. Because they were completely politically incorrect. It was a bit like South Park, where they would actually make fun of minority groups, but at the same time, they weren't making fun of it in the way that we would, because we've actually got a serious message behind what they do. With them, they were simply just joking. If they made jokes about gays or whatever, they were simply just joking. Now, I'm assuming, considering I haven't read it in so long, that it has, taken a woke turn. I mean, it is produced by a university guild after all, so
it does look it.
Yeah. Now, however, they've really actually caused some controversy here. So this newspaper they called The End of Times, and the front cover has a story that says "lobbied up the arse." It's got a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu sitting in the president's chair in the Oval Office.
Nice little name tag he's got there, bend
Yeah,
over.
and the name tag, instead of like BB or whatever, it says bend over. And then you've got Trump taking it up the arse from Elon Musk, saying, "I'm still the president." And then Elon Musk saying, "Whatever you say, bitch." It's funny. It might not be so funny when I read it out like that, but when you see the visual of it,
Yeah, you're gonna have to leave a link for listeners in to see this fucking thing, because you got Elon there and Trump, and that's basically the main bit of it. But because Ben's sitting there in charge of everything.
yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, like, I don't know if it's still good, but yeah, the Prosh paper was actually bloody funny, at least back when I used to read it. So anyway, as you've probably already guessed, this has been seen to be anti-Semitic. I should also say that as BB sits there in the Oval Office in the president's chair, he's got the American flag behind him, but he's also got the Israeli flag. So obvious, what they're suggesting in this. So they have apologized.
Yeah,
they have apologized.
It's in the article.
Jewish leaders said that it perpetuated anti-Semitic tropes.
So they weren't too worried about the buggering going on. It was about him sitting there with the red fucking meme eyes.
Yeah,
because this is during the fucking conflict in Gaza. How long ago was this? Did this paper come out? Because this would have been right in the middle of everything. 19th of March. Well,
yes, so,
pretty recently then.
Yeah. And they do one every year. And when they do it, they
one.
They sell them in the city, in the CBD, and they all wear like ridiculous clothes and stuff. I've seen them there a few times. But yeah,
it sounds like fun behavior from the Students' Guild, and yet here they are apologizing for something fun.
Like I said before, the Prosh paper was always politically incorrect and offensive, right? And if people were offended by it or whatever, they would just sort of not read it. That was it. That's how far it went. You either liked the Prosh paper or you didn't. This is the first time I've ever actually seen a news article on it. And, of course, it's because they've upset some Jews.
And it's not going to end there. It's not going to end with an apology. Basically, every one of the people who are even tangentially connected to this thing, you're marked. Sorry to say, you're fucking marked.
All right. All right, and look, just quickly, Chris Minns and the New South Wales Attorney General, Michael Daly, have both said that there are no plans to repeal or even wind back the new hate speech laws that were rushed through the Parliament after the caravan hoax, what we now know to be a completely fake terror incident. So Michael Daly said there are MPs who were opposed to these laws, but are now fighting a rearguard action using the caravan as a supposed gotcha moment to suggest there's a secret agenda.
Not so fucking secret.
No, it's not so secret. I mean, if these MPs are honest, and unfortunately a lot of them are too afraid to be honest, they would say that, there was a clear agenda, not a secret one, but an obvious agenda to rush through hate speech laws at both the state and the federal level. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. It achieved its goal. So it's not a very secret agenda, Daly. And he also said this. If there had been no caravan, I would have changed not one iota of that legislation. Well, you know what?
You just wouldn't have the impetus. Yeah, you just wouldn't have had the impetus to do it, and a good excuse to go over it.
Quickly. They would have just taken longer to pass it through, And if you're talking about the federal context, remember, there was not the usual kind of parliamentary debate that you have on a bill. It was rushed through both houses with no committee hearing on it, and it received royal assent, meaning it was applicable, within 24 hours of it passing. That never happens to a regular bill. Never.
Yeah, I don't think that happened very fucking much.
No.
It's almost
And
like there was an international fucking international emergency going on that you needed to fucking
almost like
go
they
into
had
war.
external pressure on them.
Uh, well, internal. Pretty fucking internal pressure.
Okay, so, now talking about the other end, Islamophobia. Such a stupid term, but anyway. So the
Fear of the Islam.
Mayor of Bankstown, which is, I'm sure you would agree, fluoride is a province of Lebanon, not of New South Wales. He has raised concerns for the frightened Muslim community after an investigation was launched into more terror threats against Sydney mosques. Apparently,
Ooh, have they picked up the habit? Have they seen what's worked and fucking tapped on that vein?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when I first read this. It's quite possible, but look, I will say this: remember, there is such thing as Jewish terrorism, and remember that that guy who owns the burger joints, who's a big, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but he was a big Palestinian activist. Remember, one of his burger joints just went up in flames, and instantly, police were saying that it was not politically motivated. Really? Is that the tack we took when you found the caravan with explosives in it that had no detonator?
Kind of like how fucking public sentiment is what they're throwing water on, not the fucking flames.
Yeah. So look, what they've got here that says someone going under the name Wello on social media said, "Another Christchurch, please."
A social media user, eh? Fuck me, dead. That could be anything. Could even be an AI.
What it is. So, okay, basically someone did a Fed post online. That's it. It's not really a threat, is it? It's not something I'd take very seriously anyway. Okay. Moving on to housing. Some more no-brainers for you. Australia is set to fall short of our housing goals by more than 400,000 homes in capital cities, and that would push up average rents by around $100 a week. So these are the new figures coming from the Property Council of Australia. That's the same Property Council that supported that study on foreign students. So I don't know how trustworthy they are here. But basically we're not moving at the rate needed. And we're supposed to build 1.2 million homes by the end of 2030. So, yeah. We're not meeting those goals. Okay, now, the Greens. We've heard a lot about what they would demand of a minority Labor government if that were to occur. They're saying one of their policies in that context is a $12 million fund to plug the gap in accommodation for homeless.
Million or billion?
Billion. $12 billion. A shitload of money. And this is for homeless people. And I probably said this before, but look, my quick little spiel on homeless people. If you're a homeless person, you're not even capable of filling out the forms for Centrelink. Like, that's how wretched you are. You know, you can't. You're so bad that you don't even have the capacity to get the dole, and that's why you end up on the street or something like that. So if you spend a lot of money on them, that money is just being pissed up completely. Okay, because they're going to wreck whatever accommodation you give them. They're not going to use it as a springboard to get their life together and get off drugs and maybe even get a job. That's just not going to happen. So, I'm afraid a lot of the time when you talk about homeless people, you're pissing in the wind. So, yeah, this is what they refer to as their Robin Hood approach, robbing from the rich to give to the poor. So they would seek 40% tax on company profits over $100 million. And they would also have a $5.2 billion plan to provide 50,000 ongoing supportive tenancies over the next 4 years. Now, okay, social housing, that does work to an extent, basically where the government subsidizes your rent. Yeah, that's I guess all right, but again, they just want to build huge apartment blocks where, I'm sorry, you put together a bunch of people with criminal tendencies in a very small confined space.
Drug hive.
It's not good. I mean, over in Sydney, you guys have Redfern, for example. I mean, does anyone want to tell me that is a successful social experiment?
Oh. Are you a fan of that latest Judge Dredd movie that came out?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's basically just this giant tower where everybody lives in. It's basically its own little town, but it's in a big tower, and drug lord takes over it.
Isn't it interesting that dystopian futures are presented in that kind of a way? Like, I think you brought up The Fifth Element as well, like people just traveling in pods and just
look at beautiful little pod. Put a little couple of cubes on a plate, chuck it in the microwave. Within 10 seconds, got a roast turkey. Oh, give me that.
Jesus. I haven't seen that movie in bloody ages. Okay, now, look. That said, I will say that the current housing crisis is pushing some people into a state of homelessness that they otherwise would not be in. But they're usually the types who
temporary.
say,
yeah, they can basically sit in their car for a bit and get back into it.
They've at least got a car or something to stay in. So yeah, we've seen a big jump in Brisbane. Here in WA, it's Fremantle, where we've got a tent city. And so a lot of people have received move-on notices. And they're basically saying that, they don't want to do this, but they are going to have to basically start forcibly removing these people because a lot of them are just simply ignoring the instructions. And there was an increase after Cyclone Alfred because you had people squatting in other parts of Queensland and they all kind of went to Brisbane. What else they've had is in Lismore, the government actually bought a bunch of properties in Lismore that were deemed
completely
to basically be unsafe. Because of flooding and stuff. And, that Lismore's been like that for a long time. So they basically said, okay, these are areas no one should be living there. We'll buy them up and eventually, the plan is to bulldoze them and do whatever. Well, the bulldozing hasn't happened yet. So that means now a shitload of squatters have moved into those properties in Lismore.
Well, there's the thing is, they're right close to the CBD, all those fucked houses. Saw them myself. So you are saving so much money by being in these rotten, flooded out, half-collapsed buildings that kind of makes a lot of bloody sense to be sitting in those buildings and working. You could afford a house if you did that for long enough.
Yeah, but what if, say, we get, the next round of Lismore flooding, which, is bound to happen, and you've got a whole bunch of homeless people. Holy shit, man. How many people would that wipe out, in one go?
Well, there's a lot of hills around Lismore that you can run to, as long as you're on the right side of the river. If not, you're going to be sitting on top of the house waiting for the SES helicopter.
Well,
and luckily, SES helicopter is very close by. Just going to dump you on the nearest hill and grab more people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I gave my assessment of the average homeless person before, and I'm sorry, they're not going to think that far ahead,
Nope. They're going to be flooded in. The river's going to be there. You got plains of flooded water, and you got... yeah. Oh, fuck. Yeah, you're going to see more people sitting on top of houses.
It's going to be nasty. Okay, now in the Northern Territory, interestingly, the CLP there is planning to chase down $39 million worth of rent debt. And guess what? People are saying that would unfairly single out Indigenous.
Why would you say that? Why would you just bring that to the fore?
And now that would also mean fast tracking evictions for tenants who have engaged in antisocial behaviour. And again, they're saying the exact same thing: unfairly treat Indigenous communities. Why? Is it because they tend to be the ones engaging in antisocial behaviour and not paying their rent? Why would you think that? Okay, let's move on to industrial relations. So in Victoria, police have expanded an operation investigating allegations of continued bikie and underworld infiltration of the CFMEU. Why? I mean, we've already had the CFMEU put into administration federally by the Commonwealth. And the whole idea is to have them sort of operating in caretaker mode while we investigate them. Why do we need Victoria Police to do that as well?
Putting the boots in while it's on its back.
And second of all, when they talk about links to the underworld or links to bikie gangs, all they're talking about are members of the CFMEU who are also members of, say, the rebels. Okay? Because they don't discriminate on that basis. I mean, I've said before that essentially what a lot of these media outlets are saying is that bikies don't deserve to be employed anywhere.
Yeah, guilt by association. I thought we weren't supposed to be doing that stuff, but it turns out,
right? And also,
selectively, we are.
If you're worried about them, making their money through the criminal underworld, well, guess what's going to happen if you put them out of a job? Obviously, you are
better start selling smokes to people.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of them are doing that. Oh god. Now, the reason why this is why we've got this new investigation or this expansion is because 60 Minutes had yet another documentary. I think it was another full-length episode as well, just uncovering more of these allegations, but also apparently violence against women on work sites.
Huh? The fuck?
This one I haven't watched, by the way. I did watch the first one. This one I've not seen. So,
well, I wonder if it was a case of whole antisocial yelling at somebody, "Oi, get out of there! Oi, your fucking boots on! Put your helmet on!" Well, I'm being victimized.
Yeah, I mean, look, anyone who's worked on a construction site, and I have years ago, but I have done it. It's not the lingerie section of Maya. Okay, people use foul language. People get animated. They almost yell at each other sometimes, or sometimes they just do yell at each other. It's a pretty masculine, hard knocks industry to be in. And I'm sorry, but if you don't like that, don't work there. And that would probably mean most women. Most women don't want to be engaged in a work culture like that, and that's totally understandable. But don't expect the people who work there to change their behavior based on that, you know? So put down the pink high vis, stop taking those traffic control jobs away from the older guys with bad backs, and start being mothers again. Or at least go and work in the lingerie section of Maya, whatever it is. You shouldn't be on a building site.
Hopefully having a shitty enough time on the building site makes them say, fuck this, and find a good hubby, snuggle up with him, and raise the kid. You save a fortune by not working on childcare, child fucking preschools and all those, early school things.
Now, another reaction to this investigation is the coalition is saying that they would introduce racketeering laws that are sort of like anti-mafia laws, which they say would stamp out union corruption. So it will allow criminal charges to be laid on the bosses and kingpins of organizations engaged in law breaking. and they said that the focus there obviously would be on unions and their members. They've also promised to re-establish the ABCC, the Australian Building and Construction Commission, which is a watchdog for unions. They call themselves a watchdog for the construction sector generally, but if you look at the referrals made, they're only ever of union members.
The only thing they want to focus on. Well, I guess they've seen what happened to the wharfies and painters union, and they want that for the construction union, where everybody inside of the construction industry can just get fucked.
Yeah, because the Libs did like take a chunk of the power from wharfies back in the late 90s, but they weren't quite able to do it to the construction sector. Like that's the one industry where they haven't busted the unions up. And so, yeah, they always try to do it. And I mean, Howard tried to do it. He had a royal commission into the building industry. But again, when you looked at it, it was just a royal commission into the CFMEU. That's all it was.
I remember a case I was being told by a guy. He was talking about how, they basically, they're investigating union, being all dodgy and all that. But all they caught was the illegality of whatever company they're working for. And so they had to do another investigation where he was specifically only going after the union, because that way they're not going to get sidetracked by the company doing illegal as fuck shit.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like the construction companies are completely innocent here. Like that Royal Commission I mentioned, which I think was late 90s, I remember the union pointed out at the time that, for example, there was basically no investigations into workplace deaths and injuries on construction sites. Why not? There were certainly quite a few, but no, they didn't want to look into that.
Nope. If it didn't have anything to do with the union, they didn't give the slightest shit.
No. Okay. Okay, well, I'll just move on to here's a story from the Australian. So it says that building companies are collapsing at record levels, and they reckon this is because of Labor's new industrial relations policies. So they're including the abolition of the ABCC, and also the what is it called, like same work, same pay. Rules that they introduced, and that was like, if you're hired through labour hire, you should earn the same amount as a person who was hired directly through the company, for example. And the unions have actually had some wins in that regard.
Fair fucking enough.
Yeah, like what do you call them? Like baggage handlers at airports, for example. They had a bit of a win with that, which was good to see. But anyway, according to the Australian, 47 100 days, I assume that's equivalent to one worker, were lost to industrial disputes ever since Labor changed the laws. So that has coincided with 3,445 building firms moving into insolvency over the past 12 months. And builders are also apparently being strangled by labour shortages, high costs, red tape, and approval delays. Yeah, probably. That doesn't mean we have to solve it with migration. It doesn't even mean we need to solve it by busting up unions. We need to be focusing on more vocational training in this country. Keep out the foreign workers. Prices will naturally rise for these construction jobs, and more people will want to take them on.
I would like to say I'm an appreciator of puns, and this article is Labour wrecking ball is demolishing building sector. Much appreciated for the hard work done by the punsters in the Australian.
Yeah, they're good at headlines like that. Um, yeah, so it also says so these are figures from the ABS. It said that
Mhm.
65,100 out of the 415,500 working days that have been lost to industrial action across the economy since April 2022 have directly hit the construction industry, with the bulk of that activity occurring in 2024. So they're just saying industrial disputes overall are on the up.
Hmm.
Well, look, if you give the unions more power and you move more towards a system of collective bargaining, like, yeah, I mean that will happen. You will have an increase in industrial disputes. Um,
And they're
that's what
directly
happens.
correlating. They're directly correlating that with the falling of the businesses.
Right.
Hmm.
It's just it's questionable as to whether or not that's a bad thing. Is it really such a bad thing that there's a level of industrial disputes? That means that there's obviously more negotiation going on between the two sides. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going on strike. By the way, like strike action in Australia still is very very rare.
Hmm.
Like, sure, it was maybe common in the 70s or something, but it's like basically non-existent now. It just doesn't happen.
Well,
Um,
well, kind of. I've seen an example of it. I was standing there on a work site that was unionized, and we were about to begin a thing, but we needed assistance from another other people, and well, they were about to get it started and do everything, but other guys turned up, basically said, "Stop, wait, have you guys been training this?" No, to those guys, and basically, all right, we've got to stop, we've got to talk and all this because very, very well and truly, death could have happened. Death could have happened when fucking they weren't trained on that. So the union, I'm quite certain it was
yeah,
another union for mine basically stopped that work, and I couldn't really get all upset about it because, well, yeah,
no,
they didn't spend
so
the time to train these bastards to do exactly what they were doing. Oh, fuck me, did
mm,
just as well they stopped it, held it up, and basically made it a punishment. Some guys from our side actually came down and attempted to do it, and they were stopped from doing it because not their part, and no, not allowed to
so
do
that's
that.
an example of industrial action that leads to a good outcome. You know,
Yes,
but
basically punishment so that they see into the future that no, you can't just wing it and send somebody over to do a job that you hadn't even prepared for. People's lives are at risk.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, if it does cause that, and even if productivity takes a bit of a hit, that is not necessarily a bad thing. Um, but yeah, it still amazes me actually, like just how much like some people hate unions and hate the whole idea of industrial action. like, there are authors out there who just obsess over it, and then you've even got like think tanks like the HR Nichols Society. I think Peter Costello used to be a member of them. Like their entire thing is industrial relations. They don't focus on anything else except union busting.
Well, kind of in your mind's eye thinking, oh, what if I was in a business and the union came and bullied me? I would feel devastated. Fuck.
They used to have ads on that, like the Chamber of Commerce. I think they used to run this ad where like they said, "Oh, union members will come and tell you how to run your own small business," and all the
That's
union
good
guys
propaganda.
they were they were depicted as like the actors were really fat, and they all had braces on. I don't know if you remember that used to be a bit of a like an aesthetic for union bosses was wearing the braces. Yeah,
uh,
real stereotypical stuff there. Um, okay, let's move on to climate and energy. So yeah, we've already covered the energy rebates. So
yep,
uh,
$150, 75 bucks a year. How generous.
which is the cost of a couple of pints of Woodvale Union, I think. Uh,
Brookvale.
so, but in other news, about 75,000 battery storage systems were installed last year, and
Ooh.
that's up from 47% in 2023.
That's an incredible jump.
It is, and again, that's not like the free market doing it. That's because of the incredible amount of subsidies that the government pump in.
The fucking wind farms and the solar farms will be doing well with that many fucking batteries.
Right. And batteries are bloody expensive as well. You know, like
Oh yeah,
energy
acid,
storage.
lead, plastic. Fuck.
And that, you know, that's the short version of why your power prices are going up, because renewable energy is intermittent. Therefore, you need to store it. Therefore, you need to manufacture batteries, and batteries are very expensive. That's
Yeah,
why your power prices are going up.
how's that? How's that green revolution coming around? You're going to be hucking these things into the ocean before long.
Yeah, and then people, you know, complain that like spending $7 billion on constructing nuclear reactors is too much money. Really? Snowy Hydro has already cost $12 billion. That's one hydrogen project alone, and the costs are still being blown out.
I'm pretty sure a nuclear power plant's pretty consistent with its output as well. You don't need to only slightly put the cooling rods in. You can just have it burning away, producing as much energy as you need.
And it doesn't take 10 years to build one either. Okay, so the coalition is saying that they would give immediate approval of Woodside's northwest shelf gas expansion. This is one that Labor is still like sitting on their hands about. They have hinted that they are going to approve the project, but as usual, you know, they need to put up with all the legal challenges put up by the environmental lobby, and a consultation process that basically makes the company, you know, deal with these groups and pay a portion of their profits to Aboriginal corporations and that kind of thing. So, yeah, if there's any move to fast track this stuff, you know, usually I'd be in favor of it.
Yep.
So in
Gas is
Queensland,
important industry.
yeah, there's been a bit of a win. So this a Queensland coal billionaire who actually spent $1 million in the last state election to kick Labor out of power. He's now allowed to keep his facility open. So this company is called Reclusive Oak Coal. That's a bit of a weird name. And so, yeah, Labor rushed through 2023 legislation to make his coal miners move from a 450-bed on-site camp to a dying nearby town, Glendon. Now, the LNP won 11 of those electorates, including Mackay and Rockhampton, which have been out of the LNP's hands for most of the last 100 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So under those 2023 laws by Labor, workers at the company, the coal mine, would have been forced to start moving to Glendon at about the end of this month. But now the mines minister, whose electorate of Burdekin, I think is what I'm probably might be saying that wrong, but it takes in Glendon in its electorate. They're going to allow them to keep their mine camp open and delay any requirement for workers to move. So, yeah, a little small victory. I've said before that the Northern Territory CLP and the Queensland LNP, they're newly minted governments and they have actually done some good things. The problem is a lot of the time, the conservative side of politics will do this at the beginning, like in their first year of power or whatever. And then they just return to basically being Labor light later on. I mean, that's obviously remains to be seen here, but, if history is
big headlines.
Yeah.
They're getting those big headlines out there. So, look, hope and change is in the air.
Yeah.
For now.
Okay, now staying in Queensland, the previous Labor government set aside a $2.5 billion contingency for to make up for the loss of GST allocation. Uh, so Queensland, they often complain that they get screwed over in terms of how much share of the GST they get. So Labor put aside $2.5 billion to plan for that. But guess what? It's turned out that that money is now gone. Do you know why it's
Fucking
gone?
yoink.
Because they spent it on green energy projects.
Well, goes your big kitty, and now it's fucking hydrogen projects, eh? Oh no!
So
And
the
it's
fund,
you're not even getting any fucking any return on it.
no,
Ah, fuck.
the funds were allocated to Labor's flagship renewable energy projects, which included the $12.5 billion green hydrogen plant at Gladstone. And by the way, that needed an extra $1 billion of funding, and the LNP refused to provide it, meaning that that $12.5 billion project is now worthless. That hydrogen project in Gladstone is no more. They spent $12.5 billion on it, which is more than even the Snowy Hydro, and now they are not even finishing it. And that also took the entire $2.5 billion set aside for a GST shortfall. That was been pissed up.
Or maybe
Well,
someday it can be turned into a lovely set of apartment buildings.
oh my God. And you know, by the way, like there's been something like 6 hydrogen projects that have either been scrapped from inception or have been stopped in like the
What, here
past
in
few
Australia?
years. Yes, here in Australia. Um,
For fuck's
like
sake.
a
You don't
recent,
hear about it.
one, the most recent one was in Adelaide, actually. Now, they said it was because they needed the money to pay for the Whyalla bailout, like the steelworks.
Mm.
But I don't think they would have been able to afford it anyway. So, yeah. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure we've gone through each one of them as well. It never ceases to amaze me seeing these projects bite the dust.
Well, boy, howdy. When one of these fucking things get up, they'll say, see, told you how efficient this fucking thing would be.
Yeah.
Fucking
Okay, and
trailblazing.
finally, 6 developers have confirmed that they have withdrawn their bid to develop Western Australia's first offshore wind farm. Now, this was open to tender by Chris Bowen, the Climate and Energy Minister, some time ago, and a whole bunch of people who originally applied for it have pulled their application. So, yeah, I haven't counted the amount of wind farms that have bitten the dust. I'm sure there's a few, but looking at how this one is turning out, they can't even get anyone investing in it. So,
What was it going to be? Like some giant oil rig type structure sitting out in the middle of the sea, hoping to get wind?
well, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's a bunch of turbines that they put like way out into the ocean. And I mean, that's very
Bobbing
expensive.
about, I guess, attached to a power line going in onshore. Oh, do you like Rust?
Oh, yeah, and they're very expensive to maintain as well.
To put it lightly. I guess you're also fucking the sea lanes if it's in a ideal position. You know, along the
Yeah.
shoreline.
Okay, let's move on to Aborigines. So I already covered that more than $250 million is going into Aboriginal funds to protect hectares of bushland. So, you know, native title property, in other words, no big surprise there. But, oh yeah, so conservationists have said that that is just a fraction of the $5 billion green fund that the sector proposed in 2023. But they're tying this to climate change as well. They're saying that conservation of this bushland is part of reducing emissions, I guess, through planting of trees and carbon offsets, that kind of thing.
Are they going to replant it when the area burns down?
Yeah, when they've done a so-called controlled burn. Okay. So I remember I posted this one on the socials. So data for 2024 shows that you have you have schools in most parts of the Kimberley. Oh my God, where you have an absentee rate of up to 80%.
That must be doing a wonder on class sizes. I mean, you have the teacher all to yourself.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But man, can you imagine that where like the vast majority of the class does not turn up every day?
I mean, given the choice of that part of the class turning up or getting your fucking schooling done, as I say, hey, class size, there's a silver lining to everything.
So, I mean, when the coalition comes up with ideas like, we're going to cut your welfare payments if you don't put your kids in school, I mean, you can see why they do that. When you have
usually they just do that. They just do that with your driver's license. But I guess, well, if you did that, if you took away the stuff, how the fuck are they supposed to feed the kids? I guess it's just a threat.
Yeah, well, that's what the advocates say. Yeah, and I mean, well, they never carry through with that threat as well. It's empty because they're not going to let them there to starve. But yeah, I mean, it's just I read figures like this, and then you hear about how we're not making progress in closing the gap target for education. You're like, no fucking shit, we're not making progress. The kids don't even go to school. The parents don't even muster the effort to tell their kids to go to school. How do you think we're going to close the education gap? We can't.
I guess you could nick all the kids and put them in school. I think that's off the table nowadays.
Extremely coercive policy to actually do that. That would cost so much money. Yeah. So the skull of a Tasmanian Aboriginal man that was taken during colonial times will be returned to Tasmania. It spent its last 170 years in a Scottish university, the University of Aberdeen. Now, there's a lot of controversy as to how exactly that skull went from Tasmania to Scotland. But, it is true that, remnants or remains of pure blood Aborigines is actually, a valuable thing because there's none left. There's only people of mixed Aboriginal ancestry. There's no purebloods left in Tasmania.
The people with the claims on that, and I guess if you want to claim it, how do you disprove it? I mean, you could disprove it by taking the blood test and all that, and seeing just how much your ancestors handshake them. But yeah, it's.
But look,
kind of the descendants.
If you want to read about this stuff, what happened in Van Diemen's Land, as it was called back then, read Volume 1 of The Fabrication of Aboriginal History by Keith Winshuttle. But just to really quickly summarize it, when they went to Tasmania, there were only 2,000 Aborigines there.
Impressive.
Already a very small amount. And so the main reason, two main reasons why they died out. One was diseases. They had not, the Europeans brought diseases that Aborigines were not immune to.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other reason was they literally sold off their women. They were matriarchal in the sense that the woman was the one who actually provided for the family. They tended to go out and do things like collect shellfish and bring them back, for example.
Their biggest diet.
Yeah. Well, Tasmanian Aborigines, that's what they mainly ate. a lot of them had basically forgotten how to hunt because they weren't even hunter gatherers; they were just gatherers. The Tasmanian Aborigines actually regressed. They were
Yeah.
actually at an even lower level than the continental Aborigines.
So they'll grab those scallops, bring them home, and cook them up, right?
No, they didn't cook them up because they forgot how to use fire. They forgot how to start fire.
Shit.
That's another thing. Like at least like mainland Aborigines had their so-called controlled burns. They knew how to create a fire. In Tasmania, they literally like just forgot how to do that. So, yeah, the men would sometimes actually just sell off their women, basically as sex slaves, as concubines, and they'd sell them off for like a week's worth of flour and food, or like sleeping bags, or other items that were considered luxury items back then. And then
Huh.
all of a sudden, there was no woman
How the
to
fuck am I
provide.
supposed to feed myself now? The fucking
Yes,
flowers run out.
yeah, after only 1 week, and then suddenly, yeah, my permanent source of food has been cut off, and that's basically what happened. I mean, that's a pretty miserable assessment, I know, but that's what happened. There weren't massacres. There was retaliation for Aboriginal attacks on property and murder that was taking place, but there were like there was no plan of extermination that actually occurred anywhere in Australia, let alone Tasmania. I saw
Yeah,
actually the ABC.
you're gonna have to be real far-reaching to take what we did as a fucking extermination routine.
Yeah, man, but shit of this nature is still fucking coming out. Like, let me just quickly look this up. The ABC have a new documentary on like the frontier wars, or just on like the so-called massacres that happened. I think it's called Killing Times or something.
Got
I
nothing
will
better
watch.
to do. Let's go out there and just murderize everybody we see. Because
Well, I mean,
that's what normal people think. Yeah. Oh
that's yeah.
fuck.
I mean, you ask the average Australian, like, did we massacre Aboriginal people like in mass numbers or whatever, and they'll say yes, and it's just not true. Um, the only time we may have caused like what you would call a massacre, like as in a mass killing, was in retaliation. It was never a form of ethnic cleansing. We just did not engage in that in Australia. And if you read Wind Shuttle, you'll learn about that stuff. Um, okay, so on to crime. In Queensland, women in detention are apparently being subjected to degrading treatment because of poor hygiene and menstruation management. So they're not
Ooh,
given, what do
the
they call them?
pads,
Period
the
products.
tampons, the pads.
Yeah. Have you, have you heard one of, there's like one of those slogans, end period poverty?
Ugh.
I've even seen like donation bins where you can put pads and tampons and shit, like you donate them.
Oh,
Anyway,
for the homeless and all that, and people doing hard by, because there's
uh,
quite a few poor women, on the
yeah,
streets begging as well nowadays. Fair enough. I mean, a man can just go piss her and be fine. But women, they got some complex plumbing in there that needs taken care of.
yeah, sure, yeah. Um, so there's also complaints about them being given unwearable clothes, and also male custodial officers monitoring CCTV footage that shows those women undressing and using the toilet. Okay, if that's happening, yeah,
Hmm.
that's not right. That shouldn't be
Yeah,
happening.
a place where women can be is basically a good place to be. Is looking after their basically security is having women basically monitoring those cameras instead. Yeah, you can make allowances for shit like that.
Yeah, and there have also been stories of like uh, sexual exploitation of those women as well by male officers. It's not a huge thing, but it does happen.
Yeah, fucking horrific.
So the police commissioner in the Northern Territory has officially been sacked now. So this is about 2 weeks after he named himself as the subject of an ICAC, so corruption investigation. He wasn't actually named in the report. The way they do ICAC in the Northern Territory is sort of out of the spotlight, which I would argue is a better way of doing it, so that you don't have trial by media. But nonetheless, he outed himself as that, and he was also just very unpopular with members. He was seen to not stand up for them when they were being accused of being too rough or too heavy-handed with detainees and prisoners. That's understandable. But also his push to have private security workers work as prison officers. They didn't like that either. Not surprisingly. But look, two things you need to do. One, you need to pay them more. And two, you need to stop demonizing them all the time through the media. You do those two things, people will sign up to be a prison officer.
It's a really, really effective football, though, basically. Look at these evil, mean cops.
Yeah.
How can you resist as a politician, as he apparently was?
And then over the top, the senior police, or in this case, the top of the prison officers, they shit on their own rank and file.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they'd spout the same stuff that the media does, or that the left side of politics do. And no wonder their members don't like that.
Yeah. All around the world, it's kind of that. No, New York itself, record numbers of people just saying, fuck New York. These are the cops working there. Fuck New York. I'm going to work for some place in the middle of nowhere country and, not get shat on every day and not risk my life. Basically not enforcing the law.
Yeah. And who could blame them? Okay. So they are actually moving to make bail laws stricter in Victoria. I think it said last week that, apparently crime rates in Victoria are at the highest they've ever been since the introduction of electronic records that began back in 1993. So, 30-something years, in other words. We already spoke about, the huge increase in African crime. It's basically, every ethnic group that is increasing in numbers in Victoria they're the ones pushing up the crime rate. And when Victorian Labor first came to government, they loosened the state's bail laws. The coalition labelled them as an unmitigated disaster, which, yeah, is true. And now they're basically going in the other direction. And remember, they did a similar thing in Queensland. Queensland Labor actually brought back the previous bail laws after they loosened those ones. So it's amazing how, these Labor governments have to kind of come to grips with the reality after they put in what are basically social experiments in a soft-on-crime approach. Then the data comes in that says, well, guess what? Now crime's out of control. And they go back to the very same laws that they condemned previously as punitive and unfair.
Well, temporary political gains you can get from that. People, even after seeing them as being a disaster, would still support, fucking more lenient bail laws. Even after, basically, people will sit there being deluded and say, yeah, these laws are great, and if you'd put them back in, how fucking dare you?
Yes, and, well, the example of that is now 200 people turned up to Victorian Parliament protesting those laws. And again, they're saying that, they unfairly targeted minority groups. Maybe that's because they're the ones who commit the most crime.
It's good that they're bringing attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time what the left say is true. Like when they talk about, concepts like unconscious bias, in that, some people, even if they're ardent anti-racists, will still be suspicious of Aboriginal people. And if you see them in the shops, you might think about them shoplifting. I don't doubt that that's real. Like, I would agree with them and say, yeah, we do have that kind of unconscious bias or prejudice or whatever. However, I say that's a good thing because we're just recognizing patterns and adjusting our behavior appropriately. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're telling us, you're
Crossing
trying to
the
tell us
street.
not to recognize these patterns and therefore trust an Aboriginal person in the shops just as much as we would a white person. Well, that is a stupid fucking thing to do for the simple reason that the Aboriginal person is much more likely to be shoplifting.
Yeah. Crossing the street when you feel in danger, no matter who it is, no matter what the reason, will keep you out of arm's reach of somebody who could potentially decide to mug you.
Yeah, and it's a natural instinct of a lot of people. Like if you see a group of Aborigines walking towards you, you cross the road. You know, people do that all the time, and I don't bloody blame them for doing that.
And if they follow you, you stay in the middle of the road.
Yeah, we've all got kind of a mental script going on in those situations. Okay, so Queensland is going to introduce tougher child protection laws at the end of the year. So this is, some people have referred, like they name it after this kid, a 13-year-old murder victim in the Sunshine Coast. This is basically just cracking down on crimes against children. Hard to oppose that. Daniel Morcom, he was a 13-year-old who went missing in 2003. And eventually, when they caught his murderer, he was jailed for life. So, some of the things here include, well, again, tougher bail conditions. You lose your right to anonymity. And yeah, some other measures as well. But basically, if you've been accused of child abuse, you're going to be dealt with more harshly. And yeah, hard to disagree with that. All right, so let's move on to drugs. Now, again, some good policy coming from the newly minted LNP government. They're going to move to close 2 pill testing sites that were introduced under Labor. And this is despite the fact that, this is the ABC, by the way, talking, that a new synthetic opioid has been spreading in Australia. So
This is a new one each year.
yeah, well, this one is called Nitazene. I'd never heard of it before I read this article. But
Stronger than fentanyl.
Yeah, it's a synthetic opioid, meaning it's not a real opioid. I don't know exactly what it's made of, but it's supposed to sort of like mimic the effect of an opioid. And yeah, it's apparently stronger than fentanyl and even more potent than heroin. And they've detected it coming up in the water supply, and they believe that it's being used in, like they're using it to cut other drugs like ecstasy and cocaine. I guess that's so they can produce them cheaply, more cheaply. Okay, yeah, I guess so. That might be happening, but I don't see why you need like pill testing sites for that. All pill testing sites are doing is like telling you the quality of your product and whether or not you've been ripped off. You know,
Providing you a service. Fuck.
It's providing a free service to junkies so they know how good their drugs are. That does not provide a deterrent effect, you know, because the way it's sold is like, you know, if people know exactly what's in their drug, you know, they'll be cleverer with how they take it. I don't think that's really true. If anything, what it's going to do is encourage people to seek out drug dealers that can offer them a better product. And by better, I mean more potent. That's what will happen.
See if it's cut, see if there's anything weird in it, see if it's straight.
Right.
This is...
Yeah, because if one of their pills comes up in one of these tests as being like weak, they're going to think, oh, well, I got ripped off. All right, I won't buy from that guy anymore. I'll buy from the guy who has the stronger stuff.
Mm.
So I just don't see like how that is going to deter them. It's not. Of course,
And
it's not, because this was originally idea from the Greens.
the desperados among them, among the people who are taking these horrible bloody drugs, aren't gonna fucking test it. They're gonna get their hands on it. They're gonna take it. They're gonna take as much as they want.
Hmm.
And yeah, untested, on all that, unchecked. I'm not sure what the idea behind killing your bloody customers would be, when you could just send them onto the streets to get more money to bring to you to make all this stuff. But what? The only way to really do this is to get your horrible fucking drugs and sell them on the open market as a thing, as a product, and make them too costly to bloody buy. But then we're stuck with cigarettes again.
Yeah, right. Okay, so just quickly on gun laws, we're about to roll out what our Labor government is bragging are the strictest gun laws in the country. Apparently, though, gun owners are complaining that they don't have the details on it yet. So this restricts the amount of guns and ammunition that you're allowed, and there's all sorts of exemptions and exceptions and whatever that apply. And it's those kind of details that we don't know yet. The ABC actually contacted WA police to get that information, and they said they don't know either. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be basically selling their guns before the legislation gets through, because we know what shit's going to be illegal before then, and then price is going to go down. These people are being ripped off. The kind of a scenario of uncertainty, an atmosphere of uncertainty to what the fuck you're supposed to do, and very scary stuff. Yeah, when you have a product, I guess just call it a product, like a gun on you. Fuck.
Yeah, and as if we needed stricter gun laws anyway. I mean, we got those in 1996 after the Port Arthur massacre occurred.
Mm.
You know, like, why did we need to push them any further than that? Oh, okay, so a bit of news on the federal election. So the MP for Kooyong, Monique Ryan, remember that was Josh Frydenberg's old seat. Her and her husband have apologized after her husband was caught on film removing a campaign placard for the Liberal Party. Now, this guy, and the footage is quite funny, actually. Like, he's even wearing teal in the video. You see, he didn't do a very good job of like hiding who he was. Anyway, he's apologized for it, and he said the reason why he took it down is because it was placed on public property. But the thing is, though, if it's placed on public property and therefore, you know, illegally placed, you're supposed to just simply contact the council about it, and then they move it.
He's being
You're not
such a good.
supposed to do it yourself.
He's being such a good community-minded person by taking down this litter. And
Well, that was kind of
very good excuse.
Yeah, he was just kind of spinning it like that. It was like, no, this is illegally placed. I'm simply removing it based on that. Then it turns out this guy is the fucking Teal member's husband. So, not a good look, to say the least, for them. And Kooyong, by the way, is a seat that the Libs are really focusing on, because they think they've got a good chance of taking back those Teal seats that they lost in the last election. So seats like Wentworth and Warringah, Goldstein, etc.
No wonder Mrs. Ryan's hubby is out there desperately taking signs down, trying to.
Okay, so now we're pretty much, this is more Teal news. It's been confirmed now that Labor have actually retained the seat of Fremantle, even though that was originally tipped for the Teal candidate, Kate Hewlett. But now she's actually going to take on the federal seat of Fremantle. Now, she received a 26.4% swing against Labor in that seat.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's not a surprise that she now thinks that she can perhaps take this at the federal level. And this, again, is a Labor seat. It's held by Josh Wilson. And also, I think I have to point out that this sort of detracts from the argument that the Teals are strictly an anti-liberal party. No, the Teals are targeting seats that they think they can win. Okay, and yeah, that first iteration was mainly those blue ribbon inner city seats like Kooyong.
Yep.
Now they're going for inner city seats that are held by Labor, and also where you've got a high amount of Greens voters, and that includes seats like Fremantle. So, they're shifting now. They're finding they've got fertile ground in Labor territory, and they've got no problem fielding candidates there and putting a shitload of money behind them too. She had a lot of money given to her by, of course, Climate 200, funding her campaign.
Well, let's see if
and
it
just quickly,
goes in. Yeah, let's see if it goes into a federal ability to actually
they've got a good chance.
have that.
I'll say this: I think that the Libs have a good chance of taking back a lot of those Teal seats. For the main reason being because of power prices. People do probably blame the Teals to an extent for rising power prices, but they would be less inclined to think that in those Labor seats. So the Teals might end up being more of a threat to Labor this time, compared to last time being a threat to the Libs. Okay, and just quickly, the Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles has settled, out of court a dispute with his former Chief of Staff. She basically accused her colleagues of bullying, although she did not accuse the minister himself of bullying. And she has reached some kind of out of court settlement, which of course means she was paid off, and we don't have details on how much that was. Okay, so the Port Macquarie by-election. This was for the New South Wales seat, obviously, of Port Macquarie, and the Liberal Party have claimed a victory there. It was tight at the beginning. So I believe, the Nationals were actually the main contenders for that seat. So, the state level, the Libs and the Nats don't get along as well as they do at the federal level. So they will sometimes run candidates against each other, thus sort of fracturing the alliance that they do have. Here in WA, my prep's a bit out of date here because it refers to the incumbent leader, Libby Mettam. Libby Mettam has just stepped down as the leader of the Liberal Party, and absolutely no one's surprised that Basil Zempilas was elected unopposed as leader. I had a friend of mine who is born and bred in Perth, and he lives in Japan now. He messaged me the other day saying, "What the fuck is Basil Zempilas doing running a political party?" Because, this was the guy who did the sports report on Channel 7, for God's sake.
Popular personalities. Probably Eddie Maguire would probably be able to have ran one day if it wasn't for those controversies.
Now, recently, of course, he was Lord Mayor of Perth, but even that he sort of got because of his celebrity status. At the beginning, this guy was basically just a sports commentator. That's all he did. When he moved on to AM radio, then he branched out a little bit and would talk a little bit more about current events and stuff. So that is hardly the profile of a conviction politician. Someone who had actual, real, solid political beliefs throughout his life. He just sort of picked things up as he went along that furthered his media career. And
very mercenary of him.
Yeah, and because of all this internal polling the Libs have done and the constant attention that he's gotten through the media, the Libs basically had no one else. So they've got him. It'll still be a massive challenge to win in the next election because, well, the other story we've got here is that the Libs have actually now taken the seat of Albany and the seat of Kalamunda. So these were in contention again with the National Party. They were very, very close. And for a while, it was looking like the National Party would again end up with more seats than the Liberal Party and therefore actually be the state's official opposition party. Not this time. So now the Libs have actually won, I think it's 8 seats. Let me just quickly check the results here. So ALP 46, Libs only 7 seats, and the National 6. So there you go. The Libs have beaten them by 1 single seat. So yep, they are now the official opposition again. And by the way, I'm actually quite disappointed that the National Party won Albany because I really wanted the Libs to win Albany. I know that might sound strange because ordinarily I would prefer the Nats over the Libs, but the Liberal Party candidate was Dr. Tom Bruff, who said that pedophiles are part of the LGBT movement.
Fucking tragic. Missed out on that bloke being ruling the roost.
As soon as I read about those comments, I thought, oh no, the Libs are going to disendorse him now. But they didn't. I couldn't believe it. They actually kept him there as the candidate. So, yeah, disappointing he didn't get in. Okay, so just quickly on the WA cabinet. Well, at the time of this article that came out, there was a bit of uncertainty about who the state's health minister would be. That's probably been sorted out by now. I'm sorry I haven't looked into that yet. But also, controversially, Labor have announced ministers for regional areas in WA.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the minister for the Pilbara, for example. That's very unusual. I'd never heard of such a thing before. Now, it's obvious why they're doing this, though. When they passed the One Vote, One Value legislation, they basically disenfranchised regional Western Australia. Their vote is worth less now for the upper house.
The tyranny of the masses, I think the Americans call it.
The tyranny of the majority in Perth, where the vast majority of our population is. But there was always an understanding that the regional areas deserved to have upper house representation where their votes were valued more. One reason is just, the usual, tyranny of the majority kind of thing. The other was just because of the economic contribution that regional Australia makes to WA, because that's where the GST money comes from. That's where the royalties come from. That's where all the mining and resources
from the deserts, not from that, not from the bloody Perth River.
And further to that, how many people who live in Perth actually spend most of their time flying in to work on the mines in those places? That's another reason why they deserve more of the vote. But anyway, to sort of neutralize that criticism and I guess make people in the bush feel a little more at ease over their own representation, they now have ministers for their own region.
Well, there you go.
So unusual, but you know what? I think it's just a sideshow. I don't think it's going to make any difference at all. It's just there to have the appearance of representing regional Australia. Okay. So going to the Northern Territory Country Liberal Party, they've just passed a bill through Parliament that gives them the power to override dozens of statutes relevant to projects of economic significance. Now, some
So you can
people
get
have
right over the green tape.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So, yeah, the green and the red tape that is applied to uh, energy and other projects, as we know, are very cumbersome. And then, of course, you have the bloody the court battles as well, because environmental groups love lawfare, and it can take up to 10 years sometimes for a new project to actually get up and running. I'm not exaggerating there. So it's not a surprise that the Northern Territory has tried to fast track that process. And people say that this is like a dictatorial move, um, because it gives them the power to like override some of these decisions. No, what's dictatorial is like an unelected group of environmental elites who stop these projects or delay them for year after year after year. I find that to be
Just
undemocratic, actually.
just to make the population suffer. It's not for the good of
Yes.
anything, even though they claim it's a moral up. They're they, they just want to fuck around with the people who actually want some jobs. Anything that could grow, they try to murder it.
Yep. Okay, on to defence. Already kind of covered this in the what we said on the budget. There is not going to be a substantial boost to Australia's military spending, despite the fact the Trump administration wants us to do that. I think we covered last week that Kim
Are they
Beazley.
trying to get us tariffed?
Well, look, I think we were never going to get those exemptions anyway. I honestly don't think. But I don't know, man. It's hard for me to like justify increased military spending when we don't have much of a country to defend. And E. Michael Jones would call it going out to fight and die for the gay disco.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to defend the role of a soldier now. Going out fighting wars for Zog and everything. So
Or at the very best, just doing humanitarian shit around the South Asia Pacific.
yeah, which is what we do. Yeah, we've got a lot of troops stationed in places like West Papua and that. Um, and we build their internet infrastructure, things like that.
Great.
And we do it in return for them, taking in some of our refugees.
Well, guess
Oh, okay. So, well,
just
look,
just
one
the
thing
ones kind of boating in, not the ones flying in.
I don't think I've ever read a story before about the Greens' plan to fund the militaries in Australia, but
Huh.
here's one for you. The Australian Greens would put $4 billion into the manufacturing of drones and missiles. How about that? The
Mm.
Greens spending billions of dollars on making drones and missiles. I
Well,
don't
it's
know.
kind of
Maybe.
a big middle finger to the US, but
Hmm.
we're not going to fight a near peer enemy. It'll just never happen. We'll surrender to one, but not fight one. So, what's kind of drones going to do in that situation? Non-near peer situation? Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
I will say though that like Australian drones are really shit. Like the ones that our military have produced, they're actually like a laughing stock. Um, but yeah, I don't know how important
maybe we
drones
can
are.
donate them to Ukraine and have them blow up in their faces. Fuck.
Well, I think that's what we did, wasn't it?
Oh, thank
Wasn't that
goodness.
what we did? I'm pretty sure we gave them a bunch of our drones that were just like worthless.
And they sent them back or sold them to some other country.
I think they got destroyed in an instant. So,
Woo! Live. I guess there you go. It's battlefield tested now.
yes. Moving on to LGBT news, just one story. The National Construction Code is going to remove barriers for all gender bathrooms in Australia. Now, currently, the code only contains parameters for the building of female, male, or unisex bathrooms. Now, I thought a unisex bathroom was an all-gender bathroom. I don't
Uh,
see like
yeah.
the difference between it. Um, so,
Well, I guess a disabled bathroom is a unisex bathroom.
well, okay, here's what they say here. When I scanned the ABC article, they said the changes would also adapt the language used in the National Construction Code, replacing and consistently using gender instead of sex and accessible instead of unisex. So the difference is simply in the language that they use.
You get fucked.
Yeah. So instead of calling it a unisex bathroom, they would refer to it as an accessible all gender bathroom.
Just like with that operational health and safety to bloody worker health and safety change, where meaning without a difference.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if there's any structural difference between them. I mean, typically, like a unisex bathroom is simply where there's only one toilet and one stall.
Yeah.
You know,
We got a dunny here. Go into your heart's content. Be out of the house.
That's how you can make it unisex, because it's only one person at a time, and I've got no problem with that. But when you've got group, or what they call all gender bathrooms, I'm wondering if the difference is actually you could have multiple people in there at the same time.
If you consider it, a dunnies usually have only one entrance. They're a fucking prime place to ambush people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of crime happens in public toilets because, I mean, you're away from security cameras and everything, and you know, it's easy to rob someone like taking a piss. You know, they've got other things to
Or
worry
with your
about.
pants down.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it happens though. Definitely happens. But yeah, it just, we have to hear about this shit all the time. Fucking, I
Petty
agree
shit.
though. Like, there should be like a separate bathroom for freaks. Okay, because like, you know, I don't want the so-called trans woman to be going into the women's bathroom, because that's not a real woman. But at the same time, I don't want that cunt in my bathroom either. He should go to the fucking freak stunny.
Yep.
That's
He
where
can
he
get in
should.
that handicap dunny.
Yes, he can fucking just get away from normal people. Okay, we'll skip the story on health because again, and we'll skip the story on childcare because we did that in the budget. So, moving on to gambling, the Victorian Parliament will debate a bill to introduce pre-commitment cards that are already in use at Crown Casino for all of the poker machines. So they want it now to move from just that venue to across the state. Remember, Victoria is a state where pokies are legal outside of the casino.
Ooh.
I come from a state where that's not the case. Like, we're not allowed to have pokies in the pubs and stuff. We only have them at Crown.
Not even in the VIP room?
The VIP room where?
Oh, most pubs have a big sign saying VIP room for VIP, which means it's a pokey room, because you can't advertise that you're having a bloody pokey in there.
Don't. Well, considering I had to have that explained to me, no, we definitely don't have that here. I do, yeah. Now that you mention it, I do remember seeing those in Sydney though, and I remember I was really surprised actually, like just how many pokies I saw in Sydney.
Oh yeah, they're a big they're a big money maker. Ridiculous not to have them in your pub. It's awful. But
so for the year 2023 to 24, Victorians lost $4 billion on pokies alone. So that's not even including other forms of gambling. But yeah, remember, people lose more money in pokies than they do on the tables, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, because with the pokies, what, you pay like $2 at a time? Whereas on the staking,
Microtransactions, team.
yeah, but it's just because those people sit there for so long, shoveling the coin after coin after coin, like it all adds up, and they get
Oh,
hooked.
mate, I just saw this thing on Twitter. This guy was taking a picture of somebody on the Poké machine, and they were withdrawing on the machine from their bank account $20,000 to pay into it.
Yeah,
Oh.
it happens. Yeah, I remember. Like I know he's a dickhead, but like Louis Theroux, who do those documentaries. Like he did one where he was in Vegas, and yeah, he was interviewing a woman who said that she had already lost $1 million on the pokies. It didn't matter so much to her because she was like a widow, I think. Like her husband left her a lot of money. But the way she chose to spend it was, yeah, on the pokies. And she basically justified it because it was entertainment. And I was like, what, $1 million worth of entertainment?
Buddy,
Really?
you'll be able to buy the world's fanciest vibrator for $1 million.
Yeah, so anyway, this trial for the pre-commitment cards would be trialed across 40 venues for 3 months later this year. And then obviously, the plan is to kind of roll them out to make them compulsory. Now, we've covered a few times that they have tried to do that at least on a voluntary basis in New South Wales, and it's been an abject failure. Like, basically, no one opts in to these pre-commitment cards.
You got to make it mandatory. And
you-
if any of our listeners are having a problem with this bloody pokey thing, there's apps out there. There's apps out there you can play to pull the reels on your phone. And it costs, well, it's got microtransactions if you like, but it costs nothing to get so many reels a day. Get a couple of these apps. Get your satisfaction on with that. It's a real fucking horrible addiction, and you can get over it with just apps, other odd ways of avoiding putting money into those fucking slots.
Yeah, I mean, and you've even got politicians who run on the single issue of poker machines. Remember Nick Xenophon, the senator that we had from Adelaide? Before he entered the federal Senate, he was from the No Pokies party in South Australia, and he was actually very popular.
Yeah, good stuff. That's a good moral crusade to be on.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of shitty in other areas, but yeah, and yeah, I used to be a libertarian. I no longer say that it's as simply as a choice for the person to make, and who are you to interfere and all of
My
that.
wallet, my choice.
Yeah. I'm like, no, that's the fucking childish argument. Look at the raw numbers, like what I just said: $4 billion lost on pokies in 1 year in Victoria alone. Also, you want to talk about the people going bankrupt and committing suicide? There's a huge suicide problem with people addicted to pokies. And I'm sorry, if that means a bit of paternalism, then so be it.
Yep, get the stick. Better than dying.
Yeah. Okay, so South Australian farmers. We're moving on to agriculture now, which we don't cover very much. They've had like a record drought. It's really bad for farmers, and so they've joined. South Australian farmers have joined the opposition on the steps of Parliament in South Australia, calling for more government action. So they said 20 primary producers travelled from all around regional South Australia to hear the Premier Peter Malinauskas, and a bunch of them, I think, interrupted him during question time. But yeah, they've had record low rainfall and record water shortages. Yeah, look, I support the old One Nation policy. Maybe they still have it, which is all of Australia's foreign aid money should be redirected to infrastructure in the bush, in particular water storage. And we've got enough to do that. If we didn't engage in all this bloody nation building that we do, in the South Pacific and that, we could easily fund this kind of thing.
Well, that money would be doing the exact same thing, just with actual logistics lines to get that shit out there. The poor bastards
Yeah,
with no water, bloody
but also,
waiting for rain to fill their tanks up.
you're going to be building it for a population that can also maintain that infrastructure.
Oh yeah.
They
I
don't know
got
how to maintain it in PNG.
a fun little story. There was an island my grandfather fought on during World War II. He went back there afterwards to basically help with the infrastructure. Dug wells, fucking, to get water to these people. You fucking beauty, getting well from the aquifer much better than getting it out of the stream. He went back a couple of years later to find all of the wells pipes had been dug up. The well being used as a dunny, and all the pipes used to make basically corrals for the pigs. So that's your hard work.
Yeah, shit. I mean, look, I agree with foreign aid to the extent that we resettle some of our illegal immigrants, and that's it. That's all. Maybe if we provided foreign aid for South African farmers, I'd be for that. But the way we're currently spending it, no.
Nothing to
Okay,
anything good.
so God, I can't believe how often we're talking about this now. Salmon farming.
Yeah,
So
legit.
Labor is going to push through legislation uh, that would derail a legal battle over salmon farming and its impact on endangered ray. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, I mean, very often when it comes to the farming of any kind of fish, I remember it was a real common thing to say that like we killed dolphins when we did that, and who wants to harm a dolphin?
Oh,
Um,
these skates. Yeah, I see the little ray they're talking about. It's not even a stingray. It's just this thing with a nose on it. Oh, I guess they got a rare one over there.
yeah, perhaps. Um, So you've got, oh bloody hell, three separate conservation groups that are taking legal action to basically have Tanya Plibersek, the environment minister, shut down the industry. Labor, as they typically do, just kind of stall the process without
As you
actually
do.
shutting it down. That's what they like to do, like to at least appease the baying mob. Um, but anyway, Albanese said that they would pass legislation that would introduce or that would make appropriate environmental laws to continue sustainable salmon farming. So they're trying to assure the salmon industry that they can continue salmon farming. This looks a lot like the Adani coal mine, where a lot of people just didn't kind of believe Labor that they were going to approve it, with good reason. Um, And so it's a similar kind of thing here. It's like people just don't trust Labor when they do give in to the environmental lobby a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
You can rely upon them to stab you in the back.
yeah. Now, also, the salmon industry is actually going to be spending a lot of money on legal action against federal Labor, and this is to
Hmm.
do with the foreign imports from Chile. So I actually didn't know this, but a lot of our salmon is imported from Chile,
For fuck's sake.
which obviously creates further competition for our native salmon industry. And well, I guess the salmon industry is saying that this was an illegal move. Um, so this was late 2024 that this was made, and yeah, basically they just wanted it reversed. So I don't think they consider Labor to be a friend of the industry.
Yeah.
Now, also at the same time, there's been talk about there being an increase in the amount of diseased fish, including salmon, um,
Uh,
and that some of that fish is being sold for human consumption. If you look at the graphic they've got on that story, it's very gross. I imagine that would put a lot of people off eating salmon. But they're
Well, I mean,
saying,
if it doesn't
Yeah.
cross species, then it's not a problem if you chop it up and you can't see how horrible it is.
yeah, well, that's what they're saying here. So this was a recent bacterial outbreak, and they said that it doesn't move from fish to human. So I guess the issue here is simply, what they call the yuck factor. People just don't like the idea of it, even if it actually tangibly doesn't mean anything.
People eat
And yeah,
raw mollusks and shit, don't they? And I find that moderately horrifying, even though I've done it.
I'll have you. I've not done that.
Bit of lemon,
Okay.
if I can.
So, education. So the Chief Executive of Universities Australia, in other words, the head of the big education lobby, has called for full and proper funding to higher education, accusing both parties of seeking to kneecap the revenue source of international students. So this is the one thing that makes me think maybe we'll actually get a real cut to foreign students if you have big education worried. So they're saying that, look, basically, if you want to cut these numbers, you've got to give us more money. You've got to pay us off.
Huh. That's
No.
that's a.
Look, here's what you do.
It's the government. They're basically saying you have to. If you want to make this change, you're going to have to pay us off. Well, university's always going to be making money, even if it's getting cut in and all that. It's good.
It's roughly a $40 billion a year industry.
Mm.
Maybe say that differently. No, it's more than that. The foreign student industry is roughly $40 billion a year.
And they only make up 30%?
Something like that, yeah. So, no, it's a shitload of, I mean, universities, they're businesses, much like any other.
Yep.
But they receive, I don't know, roughly 2/3 of their funding from the Commonwealth, I believe. And then, they top it up with all this extra foreign student money. But no, look, I would make university free. I would make it so there is absolutely no international students, and I would even include whites in that. I would make it a completely national program. But then I would massively increase the entry requirements. And also, if you fail, I don't know, let's say you fail 3 units, 3 strikes and you're out, you get kicked out of your course. That's the way you ration education spending, is doing it
Only
that
the
way.
best of the best will get through that way. Or at least be the best will get their chance at it if they're not being priced out. But I do remember
That's the way we used to do it. That's what Gough Whitlam did. That's how he ran it.
I do remember talking with a bloke wasn't Australian, but basically comparing the price of how much it took to redo my forklift certificate compared to how many fucking $1,000 he had to spend to get his forklift certificate.
Right.
So they are being fucking fleeced on that end of it. They don't get subsidized when it comes to that. So it gave me an appreciation for how little it costs for me to get my certificates.
Yeah, man. Like, I would say actually basically on the whole, I regret going to uni because, I've got mates who just did like a simple 1-year TAFE course and they earn more money than me, And simple things like that, and I'm like, why did I waste my time,
Oh, mate, you just got to be told about this and actually be willing to hear it at a good time in your life to not make the mistake of spending years on something silly.
Kids. They give the message to high school kids like, you must go to uni. Like, you're a
Oh,
loser if you don't go, They certainly did that to me as I went through the system, and I can only imagine that they still do it. Okay.
Bloody high class because you go into uni.
So Albo and David Crisafulli, the Premier of Queensland did a joint media conference where they announced an extra $2.8 billion from the Commonwealth into education in Queensland. It was one of those rare occasions of like bipartisan support. So not much else to say on that. E-scooters. So the high...
Oh, there's things that go up in flames all the time.
Yeah, that's right. And then like set buildings on fire.
Because they're in the
one of those
basement.
Lime and Neuron have announced they will no longer operate in the city of Yarra, which is in inner Melbourne. Now, that is actually after the council imposed a 400% increase in fees.
Oof.
But also, there's also just been a blanket ban of e-scooters in the CBD of Melbourne. And not surprising, they're fucking annoying, those things. Notwithstanding the fact that they go on fire, which they do. And I'm sorry, but the people who use them are all fucking dickheads. They all are. They like intentionally try to scare people.
Oh, bloody skateboarder race.
I had an Aborigine who came up to me like from behind. I didn't see him coming. I was just walking in the city, and he yelled "fuck you, cunt" in my ear, like right as he drove past me. They do shit like that.
Yeah. And they're quicker than you can fucking get up to them. Fuck.
Yeah. Okay, and last story. We haven't said much about Brittany Higgins, but the political staffer Fiona Brown, who I believe was what's her name? Why have I forgotten her first name? Linda Reynolds. Linda Reynolds, chief of staff. She was named by Brittany Higgins as a person who tried to cover up her alleged rape in Parliament House. And finally, I've been saying that she should do this for years. She is now filing a fair work case against the Commonwealth for that. I think she should have gone a step further. I think she should have launched defamation proceedings against Brittany Higgins herself. Maybe she saw the outcome of the Bruce Lehrman case and thought it wasn't worth it. I'm not sure.
The political atmosphere of the times. Yeah. So basically, it wasn't good then. Maybe you got a chance now.
Yeah. And also the fact that Brittany Higgins did get a Commonwealth payout. I believe it was well over $1 million. So, she's set for life, basically.
As long as she doesn't go to the pokies.
Man, very funny you should say that because, her partner, David Shiraz, who, was definitely central to the whole plot that they were making. He previously, he was married before, and he basically stole all of the money from his partner, and he pissed it up at the casino in Canberra.
Oh, good luck getting it back. Fuck.
Yeah. And so now he's got a new cash cow with his new partner.
As long as it lasts.
Yeah. So yeah, while I would much rather see her go after Brittany Higgins or maybe even Channel 10, she's going after the Commonwealth in a fair work case. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But no doubt she was still treated unfairly as a staffer.
Yeah. Getting that payout, getting that bag.
Oh, there we go. So thanks for joining us, guys, on this slightly longer than usual budget edition of The Racer, and apologies for coming to you a bit late this week. We'll try to get it back to schedule next week. Remember that all the links and everything are at theracer.biz.
Yep.
And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.